Chapter 722. With the return of the hunting team, the men and women of the tribe immediately became busy. Slaughtering, disemboweling, skinning. For a moment the originally fresh air was filled with the stench of blood and stench. The women set up a big pot to light a fire, and the men threw the big pieces of meat directly into the pot to cook, and some directly roasted them over the fire. The children, with small knives in their hands, worked together to pry open the beasts' mouths, and pulled out the sharpest fangs of the beasts. Someone carried a big bag of salt from the cave, smeared most of the remaining fresh meat with salt, pickled it on the spot, and then transported it to the cave to be stored in the shade. The various kinds of animal skins that were peeled off were also sprinkled with powdery substances and dried in the sun. It was estimated that after processing, it could be made into clothes for them to wear. After a while, the smell of meat and stench coexisted in the air. The people of the tribe seemed to have smelled the most wonderful smell in the world, and the children happily jumped up and down. Xianxia sat alone on a small grassy slope at the side, looking at these easily satisfied people with a smile. Night fell, the bright moon rose in the sky and the stars twinkled. Piles of bonfires were burning at the foot of the mountain, and the stench in the air had long dissipated, leaving only the rich smell of meat, which made people feel hungry. This tribe of only a few hundred people seemed to have turned out in full force at this time, all gathering at the foot of the mountain, dancing a rough dance around the bonfires. Only then did Xianxia realize that those who were qualified to live in the cave were women and children, and many of the women had big bellies. 6 rather old women dressed in the most colorful furs of wild beasts, with the brightest feathers on their heads. They were escorted to the flattest grassland, which was covered with soft animal skins, showing off their noble status. Just after the 6 old women sat down, the animal skin drum that had been placed on the side made a dong-dong sound, cheerful, warm, and full of passion. Garland, the most beautiful and sexy woman in the tribe, was the first to jump into the middle of the bonfire, her seductive hips and waist twisting like a water snake, instantly igniting a night of revelry. Men, women, old, young, and children began to sing and dance to their heart's content. The wild singing resounded through the night sky, and the unrestrained dancing was unrestrained. A feast that belonged to this tribe began. The delicious meat was taken down from the pots and grills, and the most delicious parts were cut off and presented to the 6 old women. Then everyone began to eat heartily. The fragrant liquid in the urns was also drunk by everyone. A simple and happy life. Xianxia, who was excluded from the crowd, sat alone on the grassy slope outside the fence, watching everything with a smile. Someone noticed his loneliness. Galen brought him a piece of meat on a wooden plank, along with a hollowed wooden cup filled with fragrant liquid. "You must be hungry. It's for you." Galen placed it in front of him. Xianxia looked at the wild, sexy, and kind woman in front of him and said, "Thank you." He picked up the cup and sniffed it. It was really fragrant. He tried to take a sip but found that it was sour and difficult to swallow. He grabbed the piece of meat and took another bite. It was a little overcooked. Other than the fragrance of the meat, there was only the salty taste. The taste was really not flattering. He really did not know how these people could eat so happily. For him, who was used to eating delicious food, it was a little funny, but in order to show respect to the kind hostess, he forced himself to finish it one bite at a time. Galen, who had been staring at him, smiled and said, "I'll get you some more." Xianxia hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, I'm already full. I really can't eat anymore." Galen frowned and said, "You only ate so little. No wonder you're so thin." Xianxia smiled awkwardly. Galen sat next to him and asked curiously, "You really don't remember anything about your origins?" Xianxia smiled and shook his head, indicating that he really did not remember. He then pointed to the 6 old women in the tribe and changed the topic. "They are your tribe elders?" "Yes." Galen nodded. Xianxia asked curiously, "Why are the tribe elders all women? What about your tribe leader? Is there no tribe leader?" In his mind there must be a tribe leader in every tribe. Galen patted her chest and said, "I am the tribe leader. Women are the most respected, so the tribe elders are naturally women. The women who can become tribe elders are people who have made great contributions to the tribe. They are all the women in our tribe who have the most children." Xianxia was stunned. After the 2 of them talked for a while, he finally understood the situation of this tribe. It turned out that this tribe was a small matriarchal society. Women had the highest status in the tribe. Especially the women who had the most children, they were respected by the entire tribe. Just like the 6 old women, they were respected by the tribe as tribe elders. And Galen could become the tribe leader because she was the most beautiful and sexiest woman in the tribe. She could attract the most men. This seemingly ridiculous thing had its own explanation. Women who could attract the most men to have sex with were the most likely to have the most children. This kind of women enjoyed a status second only to the tribe elders. At the same time, they had the right to choose the strongest men to have sex with. They wanted to give birth to the strongest men or the most beautiful women. Then the most beautiful women could attract more men to have sex with, and the strongest men could protect the tribe and hunt more prey to raise the tribe. Based on this logic, beautiful women made great contributions and carried the heavy burden of strengthening the tribe. They really did have the right to become the tribe leader. In short, in order to reproduce the next generation, this tribe highly advocated sex between men and women. It could be done at any time and no one would look down on it or feel ashamed. Instead, the men and women who did not do it would be looked down upon by everyone. When a woman appeared in the tribe that was recognized as more beautiful or sexier than Galen, then Galen's position as tribe leader would be handed over. Although it was ridiculous, there was no doubt because the more beautiful woman could attract the stronger men to have sex with. Xianxia was speechless. The relationships in this tribe were a little messy. To put it bluntly, it had even disrupted ethics. The children born were raised by the entire tribe. In fact, it was impossible to tell who the father of the child was. As long as the woman was willing, any man in the tribe could have sex with her at any time. However, if the woman refused, the man had no right to force the woman. This was because women had a very high status in the tribe. After knowing this, Xianxia could only shake his head and smile bitterly. It was not good for him to make any comments. There was naturally a reason for it to exist. While the two of them were sitting here talking, there were already many aroused men and women rolling around on the grass. Xianxia really found it a little hard to accept. He could only silently say, "Get used to it." "Galen, what did you mean by the fence meeting you talked about during the day?" Xianxia asked. Galen sized him up with a curious gaze as if to say, "You don't even know this. You really have lost your memory." After organizing his thoughts, he said, "The most honorable place in the entire continent is the Immortal City. There are many powerful immortals living there. Below the Immortal City are many great feudal lords, and below the great feudal lords are the feudal lords. Within the territory of every feudal lord there are many tribes. Our tribe belongs to the territory of Lust City's city lord, and the city lord is also the feudal lord. The entire continent holds a fence meeting once every 3 years. First, there will be a division competition in the feudal lord's city. The top 100 strongest warriors will be qualified to go to the great feudal lord's city to participate in the finals again. The top 100 warriors in the finals will have the opportunity to go to the Immortal City. We don't know what happens after going to the Immortal City, but it should be to serve the immortals." Xianxia frowned and muttered, "Don't tell me there are no benefits to participating in this kind of competition?" "Of course there are benefits," Galen explained. "If the tribe's warriors can win in the preliminary competition and enter the top 100, the tribe can get a prize. If they win in the finals, they can get even more prize money. With the prize money we can buy enough salt." "Buy salt?" Xianxia was stunned. "The sea is sealed and we can't get close. Naturally we can't get salt. Only the people of the Immortal City have a way to get salt. Salt is very expensive. The surplus of our annual hunting harvest is sold in the city, but the money we earn isn't even enough for the tribe to use for a month. So only the tribe's warriors can participate in the fence meeting and win. With enough prize money, they can buy enough salt for the tribe to continue living," Galen said. "So that's how it is." Xianxia nodded slightly, then suddenly asked, "Will the victorious warriors come back?" "The warriors who win in the preliminary competition will get the right to live in the city and can continue to earn money to buy salt for the tribe. The victorious warriors in the finals will go to the Immortal City to enjoy life and won't come back." Galen said this with a complicated expression. Xianxia seemed to have a sudden realization. The dangerous East Holy Land that was rumored to be in the cultivation world had already formed its own social system. The so-called immortals in the Immortal City were probably the immortals who were sealed here in the immortal world. Weren't there people from the underworld? Where did they go? Did they all die? Such powerful people shouldn't die so easily. Yu Qianzhou patted his head and said, why do I vaguely feel that other than the immortals in the immortal city, there are some more powerful people but I just can't remember. You're talking about the people who live in the underground world, right? Galen reminded. Underground world? I think so, I can't remember. Yu Qianzhou smiled awkwardly. Galen immediately explained, legend has it that there's an underground world under the mainland. A group of people who are as powerful as immortals live there, but they don't like to see the sun so they rarely show up on the mainland. You should be talking about them, right? Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly. It seemed that the so-called people from the underground world were the people from the underworld who were sealed here. Chapter 723. Thanks to Chief Garland's care, he wasn't allowed to sleep in the open. Instead, he was given a tent. In fact, it didn't matter if Yu Qianzhou wanted a tent or not. When he refused, Garland looked at the moon in the sky and pointed to the lake. Every time there is moonlight, the crocodiles in the lake will climb to the shore. It's dangerous for you to sleep outside the fence. Crocodiles? Yu Qianzhou said in disbelief. Why do you bathe in the lake when there are crocodiles? Garland smiled. These crocodiles are called moonlight crocodiles. They only come to the surface of the lake at night to breathe. They only climb to the shore when the moon appears. Usually they hide deep under the lake. You will be fine as long as you sleep inside the fence. They rarely break through the fence. Even if they break through, the fence will block their movements. We can avoid them in advance. Rarely. Yu Qianzhou frowned. They can still break through. You live by the lake, aren't you worried at all? At this point he suddenly stood up and stared at the surface of the lake with bright eyes. Others might not be able to see it, but with his cultivation he saw a huge whirlpool in the distance. A huge silver-white figure dived into the lake. If it hadn't moved like this, it would have been difficult to distinguish the figure from the moonlight reflected from the lake. Yu Qianzhou said in a deep voice, Chief Garland, there is something in the lake. Garland pulled his clothes and signaled him to sit down. She smiled. Did you see something silver-white? That is the moonlight crocodile. In fact, it is safer for us to live by the lake. If bad people sneak in at night, they will often be attacked by the moonlight crocodiles hiding in the grass. Don't you think they are like the guardian of our people? Since she said this, Yu Qianzhou sat down and relaxed his vigilance. He asked suspiciously, have the moonlight crocodiles never attacked you? Garland frowned and muttered, I heard from the older generation that there was a moonlight crocodile attack about 200 or 300 years ago. However, I haven't seen it since, so there shouldn't be any problems. 200 or 300 years ago. Yu Qianzhou's eyebrows twitched as a thought flashed through his mind. Could it have something to do with the Eastern Holy Land opening once every 300 years? However, this was only a momentary thought and he himself could not be sure. Garland suddenly pulled him and pointed to the lake, indicating for him to pay attention. Yu Qianzhou looked over. In fact, he could see far more clearly than Garland. He saw ripples on the surface of the lake. A group of 2 to 3 meter long silver-white short-limbed fellows climbed onto the shore and dived into the surrounding bushes. There were hundreds of them. In fact, even if they didn't sneak in, the moonlight on their outer appearance would become a natural camouflage under the moonlight. As soon as they crawled into the bushes, they stopped moving. It was as if they were waiting for their prey. If humans or animals trespassed, they would really die under their ferocious fangs. This made Yu Qianzhou click his tongue in wonder. There were indeed all kinds of strange things in this world. There was actually a silver-white crocodile. However, he had some doubts. Was the huge white shadow in the lake really them? Could it be that they surged in a group and he did not see it clearly? The moon was high in the sky. After indulging to their heart's content, the clansmen returned to rest. The bonfire turned into red charcoal, and the red light gradually faded and gradually extinguished. Inside the fence, there were a few more braziers for illumination. There were also a few clansmen holding torches and patrolling around at night. Garland, who had left and returned, led Yu Qianzhou into the fence and came to a small tent in the center. He said, You can sleep here for the time being tonight. Don't run around if you have nothing to do, lest you get injured by the arrows of the night patrol clansmen. This tent could only sleep one person, but Yu Qianzhou did not have any objections. In fact, it did not matter if he had a tent or not. At this moment, Boli, who was half naked, came again. He directly carried Garland away and entered a tent at the foot of the mountain. Yu Qianzhou listened to the panting and moaning sounds in the surrounding tents and shook his head speechlessly. They were really a clan that worshipped tradition. He had learned something new today. Then he also went into the small tent. The inside was covered with a layer of soft animal skin, so that people would not lie directly on the grass. Yu Qianzhou lay inside with his arms as a pillow and his legs crossed. He was not sleepy at all. His mind was constantly thinking about Bai Changchun. With Bai Changchun's character, he would definitely find an expert to fight when he came here, so the Immortal City would definitely be his goal, or it could be said to be his ultimate goal. Because the top experts of the Eastern Holy Land would definitely be there, and Bai Changchun would definitely not be able to resist such a temptation. In other words, as long as he went to the Immortal City, he would have a chance to find Bai Changchun and bring him back. However, he was unfamiliar with the place and did not have Bai Changchun's cultivation. If he rashly went to the Immortal City, he would definitely not have a good ending. Just think about it, he could not even deal with a soul formation expert. How could he deal with a group of immortals? After thinking about it, his eyes suddenly lit up. If he could participate in the fence gathering, wouldn't he have a chance to go to the Immortal City? Bangwalala. Suddenly there was a chaotic sound outside, followed by screams. Someone shouted, "Help!" Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He could already hear the sound of people running out of the surrounding tents. "The moonlight crocodiles are attacking us!" People kept shouting. Among them, there were the screams of women and the frightened neighing of fine horses. It was obvious that the outside was already in a mess. At first, Yu Qianzhou thought they were doing some kind of ceremony, but he suddenly sat up and dashed outside the tent. The moonlight shone like mercury. Many men raised torches, spears, and swords as they swarmed downwards. They saw hundreds of silver-white crocodiles rushing towards the crowd. The fence had long been knocked down by the crocodiles, and a few men were being dragged towards the lake by the crocodiles. The arrows, the spears, and the swords couldn't effectively cut through the silver-white skin that was like armor. They almost didn't cause any damage to these fierce amphibians. The attacks of the cannibals were basically ineffective. Instead, they were once again bitten by the swarming crocodiles, and a few people were dragged back. The light of the torches flickered, and screams mixed together, ringing through the night sky. Yu Qianzhou's eyes narrowed. He saw the huge white figure in the lake in the distance again, stirring up a huge whirlpool in the middle of the lake. Beside him, there were people rushing down with weapons, all trying to save their people who were being dragged and bitten by the crocodiles. Yu Qianzhou's face darkened. He still wanted to rely on the cannibals to bring him to the Immortal City. If the crocodiles killed most of the cannibals, then the cannibals wouldn't be able to participate in the fence gathering. Wouldn't that ruin his plan? However, he didn't want to show his cultivation in front of the cannibals. As Yu Qianzhou's eyes flashed, a young man holding a spear suddenly tripped by the rope of the tent. The spear that swayed in front of Yu Qianzhou was pulled back by Yu Qianzhou. The young man jumped up and was still looking for his spear when he suddenly saw Yu Qianzhou, who was standing next to him, raise his spear and throw it with a whoosh. This spear, which was infused with true essence, whistled through the air and nailed to the side of the lake. It directly penetrated the head of a moonlight crocodile, and half of it was inserted into the ground. The clansman who had his leg bitten by the crocodile quickly opened the crocodile's mouth and hurriedly crawled back. The young man was stunned, and the clansmen who were fighting with the crocodiles by the lake were also shocked. They didn't know who had such great strength to actually shoot through the hardest head of the moonlight crocodile. However, they didn't have time to find this warrior. They desperately resisted the attack of the crocodiles. One after another, the clansmen who were passing by were suddenly stopped by the young man. The young man couldn't wait to collect the spears in their hands and ran in front of Yu Qianzhou. He held a dozen spears and said excitedly, "For you." Yu Qianzhou was startled, but he didn't hesitate. He grabbed a spear with each hand and threw them. Swish swish. 2 spears whistled through the air and nailed 2 crocodiles that were dragging people to the ground. Yu Qianzhou waved his arms and threw a dozen spears in the blink of an eye. None of them missed their targets. Each spear killed a moonlight crocodile without any mishap. Moreover, the first ones that were killed were the crocodiles that were dragging people in their mouths. However, there were hundreds of crocodiles, almost equal to the number of cannibals. The people who had their spears snatched by the young man immediately reacted and scattered. It didn't take long for each of them to come back with a bundle of brand new spears. They untied the rattan ropes and held them by Yu Qianzhou's side. Yu Qianzhou didn't move and stood firmly in the same place. His two hands constantly manipulated the spears and threw them with a whistling sound. The spears accurately passed through the people in front of him who were fighting with the crocodiles. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 spears were thrown and each one was fatal. In an instant, more than 100 crocodiles were killed. With his help, the cannibal warriors immediately rescued all the people who had been bitten by the crocodiles. Seeing that Xianxia was showing off his power, they didn't try to be brave and retreated one after another. The clansmen who were holding a bundle of spears immediately ran to the cave where the weapons were stored after the spears in their hands were thrown by Xianxia. The others took turns to hold the spears in their hands so that Xianxia could throw them. The spears cut through the night sky with a whistling sound. In the blink of an eye, the attacking moonlight crocodiles were all killed. They were like nails on a board and they were all stabbed into the ground by the spears. The remaining dozen moonlight crocodiles were suddenly afraid, and they hurriedly turned around and crawled back. However, these short-legged crocodiles weren't very fast on land. Moreover, Xianxia was determined to kill them, so he didn't plan to let them go. More than a dozen spears flew out one after another and they were all nailed to the grass. Not a single one of them was allowed to escape. The lakeside suddenly quieted down. About 50 meters away from Xianxia, there were hundreds of spears stuck in the ground. Each spear was aimed at a fierce moonlight crocodile that was 2 to 3 meters long, and its head had been pierced through. The cannibals' eyes widened as they looked at this unbelievable scene. Chapter 724. Later, no one knew who took the lead in cheering. As a result, all the clansmen standing around raised their arms and cheered at Xianxia. Xianxia smiled faintly. With his own ability, killing these beasts was really nothing to be proud of. Suddenly, a delicate body broke into his arms and hugged him directly. Xianxia casually touched the smooth buttocks. He quickly pushed it away and saw that it was Garland, who was completely naked. Looking at this, it was estimated that when he was working with Bolly just now, there was a sudden accident, and he didn't have time to put on those pitiful clothes. Garland looked at him with a fiery gaze. Xianxia looked embarrassed. He really couldn't tell who was taking advantage of who. However, he was really not used to hugging a naked beauty in front of everyone. He could only smile bitterly and shake his head at Garland. He didn't want to be the strong man that she fancied countless times. He didn't have the habit of sharing a woman with others. The cheering crowd ran towards the crocodiles that were nailed to the ground. Xianxia raised his head slightly and his pupils suddenly shrank. He saw a wide wave of water rising from the middle of the lake, and it was quickly coming towards this side. Xianxia immediately shouted, "Stop, all of you, come back for me." This group of people really listened to him now. Sure enough, they stopped one after another. However, when they looked back, they were somewhat puzzled. They didn't know why he called them back. Was it because he killed the prey alone and didn't want to share with the clansmen? At this moment, there was a huge splash by the lake and a huge silver-white figure directly jumped out of the water and soared into the sky. When the clansmen who ran to the front heard the movement, they looked back and saw the huge figure that blocked the moonlight. They were all immediately stunned. Xianxia waved his hand and pushed Garland away. He grabbed a few spears in each hand, poured a powerful cultivation into them and threw them out. 6 spears formed a matrix in the air and with a strong wind, they whistled and shot out, blowing out most of the torches in the hands of the people in front. Ping ping, sounds rang out, and the huge figure that had just leaped out of the lake and was about to pounce ashore fell back into the lake, splashing water everywhere. The waves rippled in the lake and the huge figure disappeared. The man-eaters finally understood why Xianxia had called them back. Hence, they all ran back in fear and stood behind Xianxia. Recalling the scene just now, all of them stared at the undulating waves of the lake in horror. "What is that? Have you already killed him?" Garland asked with a trembling voice behind him. Xianxia shook his head with a solemn expression. The others didn't see it clearly, but he did. It was a giant moonlight crocodile that was nearly 20 meters long and more than 4 meters wide. The moment the 6 spears hit it, they all shattered. They didn't penetrate its leather armor at all, only knocking it back into the water. When the water splashed, the giant moonlight crocodile's cold eyes shone with a red light. It stared at him with resentment before sinking into the water. This beast seemed to have gained intelligence. It seemed like it was about to become a spirit. That last glance seemed to be a grudge against him. A cold smile appeared on Xianxia's face. "Even if you don't hold a grudge against me, I won't let you go today. lest you ruin my plans, you beast. You still want to fight me in the water? Without saying anything, he slowly walked toward the lake with his hands behind his back. Everyone looked at him blankly, only to see him slowly walk to the lake, wading into the depths of the lake. When the lake water reached his chest, he directly dived into the lake. He actually dived into the lake with such a terrible monster. Everyone looked at each other in horror. Then they thought about the fact that such a monster was hiding in the lake where they usually bathed, and they all felt a lingering fear. After Garland's proud breasts rose and fell, he turned around and organized people to heal the injured clansmen. Many people were still quietly staring at the lake, not knowing when Yu Qianqiu would come out. As soon as Yu Qianqiu dived into the bottom of the lake, 8 azure fire flying swords immediately came out of his body and illuminated the surroundings. Using the water art, he swam quickly in the water without any effort. His speed was even faster than flying in the air. He felt like a fish in water. The 8 azure fire flying swords formed a green lantern that quickly moved back and forth in the underwater world, startling all kinds of fish in the water and causing them to flee in all directions. This lake wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. It was probably a kilometer in length and width, and the deepest part was estimated to be 300 to 400 meters. Ordinary people couldn't dive so deep, but it was nothing for Yu Qianqiu. However, Yu Qianqiu searched the entire bottom of the lake, but he didn't see the giant crocodile. Logically speaking, with such a conspicuous white color and such a huge body, it should be impossible for it to escape his sharp senses in the water when swimming within a radius of 1,000 meters. Could it be that there was another world in the water? Yu Qianqiu frowned as he swam quickly in the water, accompanied by a green shadow. Suddenly he slowed down and slowly landed on a towering rock at the bottom of the lake. Standing on the rock and looking around at the pitch-black underwater world, Yu Qianqiu let out a cold snort. The 8 azure fire flying swords were vigilant of his surroundings. He slowly closed his eyes and let the lake water around him soak his body. Using the water art, his senses gradually became one with the lake water within a kilometer. Every drop of water seemed to become a part of his senses. In a split second, every corner of the lake couldn't escape his eyes. Even the tiny fish, prawns, and the slightest movement of the water plants were all detected by his senses. In an instant, the entire bottom of the lake was in his mind. If this lake was too big, he wouldn't be able to control it with his cultivation base. But underwater, it wasn't a problem for his senses to control the area within a kilometer. Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly opened. At the center of the lake, under the mud, there seemed to be a large living creature. But at this moment, an old and irritable voice transmitted to him through the lake water. "Little kid, you have already killed hundreds of my clones. Why do you still use your senses to chase after this old man? Don't go too far." Can actually detect my senses. Yu Qianqiu was a little curious. One must know that perception was completely similar to telepathy. It was illusory and could not be detected at all. Under normal circumstances, he couldn't use it at all. He could only use it in water, fire, and fog by using one of the 5 elements cultivation techniques, with the help of these mediums. Although it was magical, even he didn't know what was going on. In any case, it was completely different from the divine sense released by a cultivator. When he used his divine sense to check on others, or when others used their divine sense to check on him, both sides could sense it. But he had never heard of anyone being able to detect other people's senses. Yu Qianqiu slightly narrowed his eyes. With a swoosh, he scuttled to the center of the lake and floated 10 meters above the bottom. He used his senses to observe the bottom and replied to the location where he transmitted his voice. "You are that big crocodile? Looks like you have cultivated to become a spirit and can speak human language." **T. The irritable voice transmitted again. "This old man has already left the ranks of the spirits 300,000 years ago and ascended to the immortal world. How can I allow you to sully me?" Yu Qianqiu was startled and said suspiciously, "Don't tell me you are an immortal." He actually believed it somewhat. If it was said that it was impossible in other places, but in the Holy East lands, it was not strange for immortals to exist. But, **T, I am an immortal, and an immortal emperor-level immortal at that." The old voice was impassioned. As if it was such a glorious thing, it felt like it was reminiscing about the glorious past and looking back. "Who the **CK are you talking about? Immortal emperors are supreme beings in the immortal world. How can you chat with me here?" Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. Don't think that you will be safe hiding down there. Watch how I kill you. Wait. The old voice shouted loudly, little brother, from what you said, you don't sound like someone with the cultivation of an immortal. Otherwise, you should be able to distinguish the cultivation of an immortal. But that's not right either. If you haven't reached the cultivation of an immortal, how can you control senses? Xianxia raised his eyebrows and laughed sinisterly. This old thing has changed the way he addressed me from little doll to little brother. His tone has also become much more polite. It seems like he is afraid that I will attack him. Don't give me that, I won't be swayed by force or persuasion. Xianxia cackled sinisterly. Today let me, an early-stage tribulation passing immortal, kill you, an immortal emperor-level immortal. Wait. You are only an early-stage tribulation passing immortal? The old voice was filled with disbelief, or rather disbelief. You have a problem with that? Xianxia did not hold back. With a swoosh, hundreds of green flaming flying swords appeared, illuminating the entire body of water. He wanted to make thousands of them, but the true essence consumption in this godforsaken place doubled, so he could only use them sparingly. Hundreds of flying swords were aimed at the ground below. The old voice immediately said anxiously, little brother, wait. Let's talk this out, don't be in a hurry to attack. Wait. I admit defeat, okay? Xianxia snorted coldly. There is no need to resort to insinuations in front of an honest person. How dare you lie to me? If you want to die, I will grant your wish. Watch me beat you, an immortal emperor, into immortal feathers. Before he could finish speaking, the old voice anxiously interrupted and said with a sobbing tone, little brother, I really did have the cultivation of an immortal emperor. But in the battle with the demon lord of 10,000 swords 100,000 years ago, I was beaten to this point by him. Luckily I managed to survive, and I am struggling at death's door. Otherwise, I would not have ended up in this state. The demon lord of 10,000 swords? Xianxia was stunned, but he was really not in a hurry to attack now. A person who was qualified to fight with the demon lord of 10,000 swords was indeed not simple. He could not help but ask, old man, is what you said true or false? If you dare to fool me, do you believe that I will immediately pierce your heart with 10,000 swords, and then grind your bones into ashes after you die? I don't dare. The old voice sounded lucky to have escaped death, but at the same time, there was also a hint of desolation. Chapter 725. Xianxia stared at the mud at the bottom of the lake and realized that it was filled with old marks. He really did not know how the old man managed to hide there. When he used his perception to investigate, he did not discover any other entrances. He immediately snorted and said, old man, you really don't give me any face. Is there anyone who hides down there and talks to me like this? The old man laughed bitterly and said, if I could really get out, I wouldn't have to do this. The key is that I'm trapped here and I really can't get out. Don't talk nonsense with me. How did you get out just now? Xianxia frowned and shouted. The old man said helplessly, that was also my clone. My main body could not move at all. Xianxia was stunned. He rubbed his chin with his hand. No one knew what he was thinking. Suddenly he pointed at the bottom of the lake. The surrounding lake water immediately stirred up an undercurrent and churned wildly at the bottom of the lake. The old man immediately said in fear, little brother, what are you trying to do? Xianxia couldn't be bothered with him and continued to do what he was doing. The silt that had accumulated at the bottom of the lake for who knew how many years was pushed away layer by the undercurrent. The clear lake water immediately became extremely turbid. Because of the mud and water plants, the undercurrent was immediately revealed. 6 tornado-like water pillars stirred wildly at the bottom of the lake. The turbidity gradually spread in all directions. Not long after, the clear lake water within a radius of 1,000 meters became extremely turbid. Under the moonlight, the surface of the lake rippled. It seemed that something unimaginable had happened at the bottom of the lake. The man-eaters all looked at the lake in fear. They did not know what terrifying thing was about to happen next. Everyone thought that Xianxia was fighting with the lake monster at the bottom of the lake. After spending more than 4 hours, Xianxia finally cleared away the tens of meters of mud at the bottom of the lake. The turbid mud was all filtered to the sides of the lake by him using the water art. At this moment, Xianxia was looking down with his mouth agape. He swallowed with difficulty. Under the illumination of over 100 flying swords made of azure flames, A huge silvery white body that was over 100 meters long and over 20 meters wide was lying quietly at the bottom of the lake, motionless. This was a behemoth that he couldn't even imagine. It was a gigantic crocodile. Its silvery white skin was bumpy as if it was wearing heavy armor. 2 rows of fangs were exposed at the front of its ferocious head, and its 2 bright red eyes were bigger than anyone else's. It was far beyond his imagination. 2 huge red eyes were moving around, sizing up Xianxia curiously. Xianxia was stunned. After a long silence he asked, This is your real body? He focused his gaze and noticed that on the back of the giant crocodile, where its forelimbs and neck intersected, there was a huge ancient long sword pierced directly into its back, nailing it to the bottom of the lake. The exposed part of the huge sword was 6 to 7 meters long, and the blade was about 3 meters wide. It was dark gold in color and there was a faint golden glow flowing around it. He couldn't imagine who could use such a huge sword to fight. Could it be that the person using the sword was like this crocodile, a giant? Little brother, you've seen it all. Not bad, this is my territory. I've been buried at the bottom of this lake for over 100,000 years. I'm lucky to be alive. The giant crocodile sighed with an old voice. This scene was too shocking. Xianxia tried to calm down and asked with difficulty, Who are you? The giant crocodile was still lying motionless at the bottom of the lake. The old voice came from its head. The underworld has 12 underworld generals, and the immortal world has 12 immortal monarchs. I'm one of the 12 immortal monarchs, Immortal Crocodile Monarch. People call me Lord Crocodile Monarch. This title was too big. It was even more unfamiliar than the Immortal Emperor or the Underworld Emperor. He had never even heard of them before. Xianxia was deeply shocked. He awkwardly smiled and said, Earlier you said that could it be that you really had the cultivation of an immortal emperor? Didn't you say that only one immortal emperor had that cultivation? He was really afraid that this giant would suddenly go crazy. It was scary just thinking about it. Immortal Crocodile said sadly as if recalling the past. In the immortal world, cultivation is divided into 4 levels. Small Immortal, Exalted Immortal, Great Immortal and Immortal Emperor. In the underworld, cultivation is divided into 4 levels. Underworld Knight, Underworld Sage, Underworld Lord and Underworld Emperor. They are all equal, and the strength of their cultivation is actually about the same. Each level is divided into 3 levels. Even immortal emperors are divided into early, middle and late stages. In the immortal world, there are many people with immortal emperor cultivation, but only the 12 great immortal monarchs have reached the middle stage. As for the late stage immortal emperor, there is only one person, and only this person dares to call himself an emperor in the immortal world. He is Immortal Emperor Jin Tai. Xianxia nodded slightly as if he was deep in thought. He looked at the huge sword that nailed him to the point where he couldn't move at all and said, In that case, you're an extraordinary figure in the immortal world. To be able to... I presume that the sword in your body is the main reason why you're trapped, right? Yes, I was nailed to the bottom of the lake by this sword. I have been trapped for more than 100,000 years, Immortal Crocodile admitted. Xianxia asked suspiciously, You said you were beaten up by the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. Could it be that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord? It is the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. Immortal Crocodile gritted his teeth and interrupted him. The sword that trapped me is one of the Myriad Swords Demon Lord's swords. Otherwise, ordinary treasures would not have been able to trap me for so many years. Myriad Swords Demon Lord, one day I will avenge this sword. Xianxia was stunned. It seemed that this old monster did not know that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord was already dead, and still wanted to seek revenge. But thinking about it, the Myriad Swords Demon Lord was killed by the Immortal Emperor and Emperor of the Underworld outside the East Holy Land. The people trapped in the East Holy Land naturally did not know. Old monster, I am afraid you will not have the chance to avenge yourself. Xianxia shook his head and sighed. What do you mean? Do you want to kill me? Immortal Crocodile's red eyes turned, and his gaze landed on the hundreds of flying swords in Xianxia's hands. Little kid, who is the Myriad Swords Demon Lord to you? Xianxia noticed his gaze and immediately knew that he was thinking the wrong way. Immortal Crocodile probably saw him controlling so many flying swords at the same time and mistook him for the Myriad Swords Demon Lord's disciple. He shook his head and chuckled. Old monster, don't think the wrong way. The Myriad Swords Demon Lord has been dead for more than 100,000 years. How can I be related to him? The Myriad Swords Demon Lord is dead? Immortal Crocodile paused, then repeated. Did I hear wrongly? You said the Myriad Swords Demon Lord is dead? Xianxia sneered. So what if he is not dead? Are you a match for him? Don't worry. He is really dead. 100,000 years ago he was killed by the Immortal Emperor and Emperor of the Underworld. Immortal Crocodile didn't believe him. Impossible, don't lie to me. The Immortal Emperor and Emperor of the Underworld fought the Myriad Swords Demon Lord more than once, and they never got the upper hand. The two of them could not kill him. Xianxia waved his hand disapprovingly and said, It's up to you whether you believe it or not. I don't know how he died, but I heard that he fell into a trap and was injured first. Later, the Immortal Emperor and Emperor of the Underworld worked together to kill him. Trap? Injured first? Could it be? Immortal Lord Crocodile muttered to himself. After a long time he sighed and said, Looks like what you said is true. This old man was wondering why Wang Jian still hasn't taken back his treasured sword after so many years. So he has already fallen. He let out a long sigh. Seeing that he had understood, Xianxia couldn't be bothered to explain further. He stared at the giant sword on his back. Old monster, according to what you said, you are a top expert in the immortal world. Could a sword trap you? Could it be that there is something special about this sword? Knowing that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord was dead, Immortal Crocodile, who had been trapped for so many years, seemed to be a little dispirited. He replied in an aged voice, Myriad Swords cultivation was actually not much higher than the Immortal Emperor and Emperor of the Underworld. However, Myriad Swords had the help of the Dragon God, and the 10,000 flying swords in his hands. One must know that the 10,000 flying swords were the truly powerful treasures. Once the 10,000 swords became one, it could kill immortals and gods alike. Think about it, how could mere immortals resist a treasure that even gods couldn't resist? Because of this, the immortal world and the underworld couldn't stop him even if they joined forces. He relied on the sharpness of the 10,000 flying swords to kill them all. This is also why we call him the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. Xianxia's eyes lit up. He stared at the sword on Immortal Crocodile's body, almost glowing green. He swallowed and said, Is this sword that powerful? Can even kill gods? Old monster, you aren't lying to me, are you? Let me tell you, if you dare lie to me, I will make sure you die a horrible death. His expression was just short of drooling. Knowing that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord was dead, Immortal Crocodile seemed to have lost his will to live. He couldn't be bothered to explain himself. He just sighed and said, Little brother, don't drool. Swords are good, but not everyone can control them. The sword that trapped me weighs 108,000 kilograms. With your early stage tribulation cultivation, I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to even pick it up, let alone control it. You'd better give up on that idea. 108,000 kilograms? Xianxia exclaimed in shock. He looked at the sword on Immortal Crocodile's back in disbelief. Such a heavy sword could be controlled by the Myriad Swords Demon Lord like a flying sword. Oh my. To control 10,000 swords at the same time, how strong must one's cultivation be? Damn it. Isn't this bullshit? Who would have nothing better to do and forge such a heavy sword? Xianxia didn't finish his sentence of letting people see it but not use it. In any case, he was very unhappy. Because even if this treasured sword was given to him, he wouldn't be able to use it in a fight. If he really fought with his opponent before he could even pull out the sword, his opponent would either run away or kill him. It was too heavy. Little brother, you're thinking the wrong way. No one can refine such a treasure. There is a distant legend about these 10,000 flying swords. Immortal Crocodile sighed. Chapter 726. Xianxia also noticed that Immortal Lord Crocodile's emotions were a little off. It seemed that ever since he found out that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord was dead, his passionate will to beg for mercy had instantly collapsed. However, it was understandable. Imagine a person trapped at the bottom of this dark lake for more than 100,000 years. If he did not have a reason to live, even if he was an immortal, he would not be able to bear the burden of being trapped here for more than 100,000 years. Presumably, seeking revenge from the Myriad Swords Demon Lord was the reason for his persistence in living. Now that he suddenly found out that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord was dead, perhaps his only reason for living was suddenly gone. For a moment he would definitely be disheartened and at a loss. Immortals were humans too. It was just that they were of different levels. If humans did not have emotions and desires, who would want to fight and kill? Oh, what legend? Xianxia smiled. I'm all ears. Before he finished speaking, Immortal Lord Crocodile had already begun to speak slowly. It is said that in the distant past, there was no distinction between the immortal realm, the underworld, and the demon realm. It is said that at the beginning of the world, some of the oldest ancient gods existed in the world. They were the representatives of the first sentience of all living things, and each of them had great magical powers. There were fights between the ancient gods. Once 2 ancient gods fought and one of them suffered a great loss. However, he could not defeat the other. In order to vent his anger, the defeated ancient god released 2 of the 3 souls and 7 spirits in a rage. They transformed into 9 suns, wanting to kill all living things in the world. Imagine that 10 suns appeared in the sky at once. How could the living things in the world survive? Even the sea would dry up. Hou shooting the suns. Xianxia could not help but exclaim. When someone mentioned the story of 10 suns, he could not help but associate it with Hou. Previously, Nongzhu had mentioned this to him, but it was about cultivation and had nothing to do with the myriad swords demon lord. That's right. Seems that you have heard of this legend. The other ancient deity shooting sun was called the Great Deity. It was said that he had a bow in his hand called the Supreme Divine Bow. It had boundless power and could split the heavens and earth. The great god Yi was originally a fierce and combative person. When he saw the 10 suns in the sky causing misery and suffering to the living beings, he became kind and wanted to use his own power to completely quell the dispute. Therefore he shot 9 suns with the Supreme Divine Bow. But this disaster was also caused by him, and he was also the one who ended it. One was positive and one was negative, one was good and one was evil. It was hard to judge. In order to praise his kindness, the later generations named the great god Yi who shot the sun as Hou, distinguishing him from the previous Yi. From then on, the world was divided into good and evil. This is also why you have heard of Hou shooting the sun. These 4 words represent justice and kindness. So that's how it is. Why are you talking to me about this? Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He suddenly realized that this old monster was a bit like a kindergarten teacher, educating him like a child. He said weakly, "What does this legend have to do with the 10,000 flying swords of the 1,000 Swords Demon Monarch? You asked me about Hou shooting the sun, that's why I told you." Then continue what you said earlier. Immortal Crocodile paused and continued. When the 10 suns appeared, all living things suffered. The once boundless earth became hell on earth. The other ancient gods didn't want to participate in the battle between the 2, so they joined forces to create another world, which is now the divine realm. In the end, there were only 2 ancient gods left in the world. In order to make up for the damage he had caused to the human world, the great god Yi finally decided to put an end to this dispute. So he also released 2 of the 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls, fusing them with the 9 heaven and earth splitting arrows. He pulled the Supreme Divine Bow, and shot 9 arrows in a row. When the 9 arrows were shot, each arrow was earth-shattering, moving mountains and rivers. It is said that these 9 arrows didn't shoot down the sun that was the incarnation of another great god in the sky. Instead, they split the human world into 10 worlds, and each arrow divided a space-time. The 9 arrows sent the 9 suns to 9 different spaces, and the 10 suns couldn't meet each other. From then on, there was only one sun in the sky. Xianxia's eyes were a little dazed. The 9 arrows divided 10 space-time, and the world he was in had also heard of the legend of Hou shooting the sun. This was definitely not a coincidence. Could it be that the space he was in his previous life was also one of the 10 spacetimes divided by Hou's 9 arrows? Did he just travel from another space to this space? 2 worlds that were going in completely different directions had magically appeared at a point of intersection. They both mentioned the matter of Hou shooting the sun. What did this mean? He vaguely felt that the legend of Hou in this world was more reliable. This was because in his previous world Hou shooting the sun was just a myth, but in this world the myth was reality. It wasn't impossible to fly in the sky or burrow into the ground. If the legend of Hou in this world was true, then comparing the development directions of the 2 worlds, it was very likely that the 10 different spaces had all gone in different directions. And the real turning point was after Hou shot the sun. It is said that there was a god in the god realm who called the 9 arrows shot by the great god the 9 solitary arrows, meaning that each arrow represented a lonely space. And the myriad swords demon monarch somehow obtained one of the 9 solitary arrows shot by the great god E. This 9 solitary arrows can be big or small, and can even split into 10,000 flying swords. After the 10,000 swords become one, they can reassemble into the 9 solitary arrows, which is the great god Yi's heaven and earth splitting arrows. Now you should know the origin of the 10,000 flying swords of the myriad swords demon monarch, right? Now you should know the power of these 10,000 flying swords, right? Heaven and earth splitting arrows. 9 solitary arrows. Yu Qianzhou shook his head, feeling that this matter sounded a little too fantastical. He organized his thoughts and asked, that is to say there should be 9 solitary arrows, but they exist in different spacetime and spaces. And the one in this space was coincidentally obtained by the myriad swords demon monarch. Is that what you mean? If the legend is completely true, then that should be the case, Immortal Lord Crocodile said slowly. Tsk. In that case the flying sword that suppressed you was one of the divine artifact clones. No wonder you couldn't escape. Yu Qianzhou chuckled. Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled bitterly. Little brother, you're wrong. No matter how powerful a divine artifact is, if there's no one to wield it, it won't be able to unleash its power. The reason why this sword can suppress me is not because of its weight, which is nothing to me. It's also not because it's a divine artifact. If there's no one to wield it, it can't unleash any divine power. To put it bluntly, when there's no one to wield it, it's not even as good as a divine artifact refined by the celestial world's artifact refiners. With an artifact spirit integrated into it, it has a tacit understanding with its master and can automatically attack. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. It can't be that weak. Then why can't you escape? Immortal Lord Crocodile said helplessly, this is also my bad luck. My 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls happened to be nailed by it. Even so, I still had a way to escape. After all, this sword wasn't enough to kill me. Even if I didn't use my cultivation, I could shake it off with my physical body. But every 9 solitary arrows was infused with great god Yi's soul, and this sword has remnants of great god Yi's soul. Even if it's a remnant soul, it's still great god Yi's. Too powerful. After nailing my life soul, it directly shocked my 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls to the point that I couldn't move at all. You should be able to understand this, right? When a person loses their 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls, they lose the ability to act independently. They are like a walking corpse, unable to control their own bodies. As you can see, I lay here motionless for 100,000 years. Haha. I'm really quite unlucky. That's not right. Yu Qianzhou snorted coldly. Old monster, you must be lying to me. Then what's with those crocodile clones of yours? You can't use your cultivation, but you can still make clones. Who are you lying to? Zai. You don't know, but I actually don't know what's going on either. Immortal Lord Crocodile said curiously, I don't know the reason either. About every 300 years, great god Yi's remnant soul suppresses me for a period of time. If not, I wouldn't be able to use my cultivation to communicate with you. But although it's weak, I still maintain the suppression. But it's this little bit of loosening that allows me to use a little of my cultivation. Every 300 years I can use my natal blood essence to create a small crocodile clone. With a little more time, as long as I have enough crocodiles, they can unite and help me remove this sword. But who knew that I would meet you and hundreds of my crocodiles died? Yu Qianzhou was stunned. It probably had something to do with the East Holy Land that opened once every 300 years. But then he narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, What's with that big crocodile? Why didn't I see it? As he spoke, he looked around at the bottom of the lake. There's no need to look. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed. Lying at the bottom of the lake, its 100-meter-long body started to glow with white light. The white light gradually gathered above it. Suddenly, the white light disappeared and a 20-meter-long crocodile shook its head and tail, moving around fiercely. Yu Qianzhou was shocked and immediately became alert. He said sternly, Old monster, what's the meaning of this? But Immortal Lord Crocodile didn't reply. When Yu Qianzhou was about to attack the crocodile, it immediately turned into a white light and shot back into Immortal Lord Crocodile's body. The cultivation I can use is limited. After creating it, I can't answer you anymore. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed. Is this an illusion? But why does it have the ability to attack with a physical body? I'm also of the water race, so I know a little about controlling water. The combination of illusion and water control resulted in the physical attack you saw. So that's how it is? Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously. Since you can control water, why don't you use the power of water to remove this sword? Little brother, you really have a lot of questions. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed. This is already the limit of my water control. If not, with your cultivation, how could you use 6 spears to repel its attack? If you can't even block the spears you threw, how can you remove this heavy sword? Chapter 727. Why did you attack the tribe near the lake? Yu Qianqiu asked with a cold look in his eyes. Are you going to attack me if you're not satisfied with my answer? Immortal Lord Crocodile laughed. He was one of the 12 great immortal lords of the immortal world, but now he was being interrogated by a tribulation transcendence cultivator. Wasn't it funny? Behind the humor was a sense of desolation. Yu Qianqiu stared at him silently. He didn't say yes or no, waiting for a reply. However, his expression was a little cold. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed. If you don't speak, it means you agree. The reason is very simple. Although the little crocodiles are my clones, they are still flesh and blood. They have to eat, but they don't dare to attack the tribe on such a large scale, for fear of attracting unexpected trouble. But because of the loosening of the suppression once every 300 years, I thought that the big crocodiles could protect the little crocodiles, so I wanted to let them have a good meal. Who knew that I would get into trouble and meet you? I understand, Yu Qianqiu replied calmly. The surrounding green flying swords hovered in the air, ready to attack. Huh, looks like you have to kill me. Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled bitterly. So this is the result of waiting for more than 100,000 years. If I had known, I wouldn't have endured. Forget it, I'll die. Anyway, even if you don't kill me, I don't have the willpower and ability to continue suffering. Yu Qianqiu said expressionlessly. Why are you so pessimistic? His words were comforting, but there was no consolation in his tone. I've been deceiving myself. Immortal Lord Crocodile laughed sadly. More than 100,000 years of suffering. In order to maintain this old life, my cultivation has been consumed day after day. Now, my cultivation has fallen from mid-stage immortal emperor to late-stage exalted immortal. Even if I go out with my current cultivation, there is no one in the world who can speak for me. Why should I go out and humiliate myself? A huge silver-white body hundreds of meters long, lay quietly at the bottom of the dark lake covered by mud. It had not moved for 100,000 years. That pair of big red eyes, the only thing that could move, slowly closed, waiting for the end of fate. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. He could understand Immortal Lord Crocodile's feelings. It was like a boss being released after serving his sentence, only to be reduced to carrying shoes for his underling. For many people, this was a huge gap, and it was very difficult to bear. Most importantly, the enemy that he could not forget, the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch, had fallen, causing him to lose his will to fight. If the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch was still here, he might have endured the humiliation and started all over again. But now everything was over. Yu Qianqiu was silent for a moment before he said, I can't find a reason not to kill you. Keeping you alive won't do me any good, and it might even bring trouble to myself in the future. However, you can give me a reason not to kill you, or you can take out some benefits to bribe me. You don't have to say anything else. I just want to die. Besides, do I look like someone who can give you any benefits? I have a small fortune in the immortal world, but after so many years, I'm afraid it has already fallen into someone else's hands. Besides, with your cultivation you can't go to the immortal world. Immortal Lord Crocodile closed his eyes and smiled calmly. Little brother, do it. I won't resist, I just want you to give me a quick death. If we are fated in the next life, I will thank you again. The trace of compassion that had just arisen completely disappeared, and Yu Qianqiu said coldly, Immortal Lord Crocodile, then I'm sorry. He was a decisive person, and since he had already made up his mind, he did not hesitate to attack. Hundreds of cyan silhouettes let out a buzzing noise in the water, piercing through the water along with sharp cyan lights, creating circles of dazzling cyan light. A series of duo sounds rang out, and hundreds of green flying swords all hit their targets. In an instant, hundreds of green dots of light bloomed on Immortal Lord Crocodile's back. They were the hilts of the green flying swords. They had not completely sunk into the thick leather armor, and some of them were still exposed. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes suddenly opened, and his huge red eyes stared at Yu Qianqiu with an inexplicable expression. Meanwhile, the corners of Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. this old monster's skin was too thick and sturdy. Even the sharpness of the green flying swords could not penetrate his skin. As expected of an old monster that had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Little brother, we are fated to meet and we have been chatting for so long. What is your name? Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly asked. Xianxia scratched his head, a little embarrassed. Xianxia. It was as if he was ashamed to mention his own name. Well, it was indeed a little embarrassing that the other party was lying there without resisting and he couldn't even kill him. Xianxia, don't hold back. I don't blame you, I just want a quick end to this, Immortal Lord Crocodile said solemnly. There was really no resentment in his tone, as if he was afraid that Xianxia would be soft-hearted, so he comforted him with kind words. Hey, I'll try again. Xianxia floated in the water, waving his arms and slowly pulling out the green flying swords that were deeply embedded in Immortal Lord Crocodile's skin. In an instant the swords circled and danced in the water. As Xianxia pointed with a ferocious expression, hundreds of flying swords shot out wildly. Duo, sounds rang out again, but the result was the same as before. The sword hilts were exposed and did not penetrate deep. There was a brief silence in the lake. Xianxia was dumbfounded. Immortal Lord Crocodile was also speechless. His big red eyes turned, and then he revealed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He had not fought with a tribulation-passing cultivator for many years. Even with his immortal Emperor cultivation back then, he did not have the opportunity to fight with a tribulation-passing cultivator. He had almost forgotten that a tribulation-passing cultivator wanted to break through his body's natural defense, which was the nearly 2-meter-thick leather armor. It was probably just a little bit off. Xianxia's flying swords could penetrate his skin, which was already considered a good result for a tribulation-passing cultivator. What he did not know was that Xianxia was relying on the sharpness of the green flying swords. Damn it! I don't believe it. The moment Xianxia cursed, it meant that he was angry out of humiliation. He had never seen such an embarrassing thing. He spread out his arms and green light flashed continuously. In an instant, all 3,000 green flying swords appeared. Immortal Lord Crocodile was slightly shocked by his desperate look. Go! Xianxia waved his arms and shouted angrily. The green light in the lake shot toward Immortal Lord Crocodile's body like a meteor shower, but it did not have any effect. The dense green light spots inlaid on the silver-white leather were pulled out and circled again, moving up and down according to Xianxia's hand gestures. In an instant, the green light in the lake shuttled back and forth like rain, and the sound of it hitting the leather was endless. Xianxia was completely enraged. He didn't believe that the sharpness of the blue flame flying sword couldn't break the old monster's skin. Then he would bombard the old monster indiscriminately. There would come a time when the old monster's skin would be torn apart. Immortal Lord Crocodile was shocked by such an unruly move. No one would want to see themselves die like this. Even if the defense of his skin was broken with this guy's cultivation, he would not be able to kill him in 1 or 2 moves. If he used this method, he would definitely not be killed by him but tortured to death. Wait. Xianxia, wait. Immortal Lord Crocodile's voice trembled as he tried to stop him. The green light stopped for a moment. Xianxia stared at Immortal Lord Crocodile with bloodshot eyes and said in a low voice, "What's wrong? Old monster, do you want to go back on your word and not die? Let me tell you, no way, it's too late to regret now." Wait. Immortal Lord Crocodile said fearfully, "Xianxia, I didn't go back on my word, but you promised to give me a quick death. I'm scared to see you cut me like this. Are you sure you can give me a quick death like this?" Xianxia woke up from his madness. He looked at the silver leather that was riddled with holes from his flying swords, but had not been broken. He was also stunned. After a moment of silence he said awkwardly, "I have an idea. It'll work this time." Immortal Lord Crocodile said fearfully, "Are you sure? Xianxia, don't scare me. Let me die in peace, okay?" He had never thought that he would end up scaring himself by trying to kill himself. It seemed that it was better to continue living than to die this way. The disheartened Immortal Lord Crocodile began to waver. "Don't worry. I have a lot of tricks up my sleeves." Xianxia smiled sheepishly. "Close your eyes. You won't be so scared if you don't look. I'll definitely give you a quick death. I'll trust you one more time." Immortal Lord Crocodile closed his eyes decisively. He really didn't want to look anymore. "Go." Yu Qianzhou's arms formed a sword seal, and the 3,000 flying swords shot out explosively. With a burst of duo-duo sounds, all of them stabbed into the enormous body. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyelids moved slightly. He wanted to open his eyes to take a look, but he resisted. Yu Qianzhou suddenly clapped his hands and shouted angrily, "Burn!" With a boom, the 3,000 flying swords all burst into raging cyan flames and attached themselves to the enormous silver-white body, burning it. This was an extraordinary performance for him. Setting fire underwater required a delicate balance, and he had to use both water and fire arts at the same time. The cannibals anxiously waited on the lakeside. They had waited until the eastern sky began to brighten. It was almost dawn, but Yu Qianzhou still had not come out of the water. Although these people lived primitive and barbaric lives, they were kind-hearted. Everyone stared at the lake for the entire night, hoping for a miracle to happen. The cannibals, led by Chief Garland, quietly waited by the lake. They could not help but show a trace of despair in their eyes. But at this moment the entire lake in front of them suddenly emitted a faint green light, making the moon lake as beautiful as a gem. Everyone looked at each other. They did not know what was happening at the bottom of the lake, but their eyes shone with hope again. Chapter 728. At the bottom of the lake, 300 to 400 meters deep, green flames spread, covering Immortal Lord Crocodile's body and burning it angrily. According to Yu Qianzhou's estimation, as long as Immortal Lord Crocodile did not resist, the high temperature of the green fire should be able to burn him to death. The process might not be pleasant, but he had fulfilled half of his promise to Immortal Lord Crocodile. Kill him. After half an hour, Yu Qianzhou stared down, his face darkening. He could clearly see what was happening under the fire. It seemed that Immortal Lord Crocodile's skin did not change at all under the burning of the green fire. Immortal Lord Crocodile, who was under the fire, also felt the high temperature, but Yu Qianzhou did not kill him. After waiting for a while, he finally opened one eye to peek. It would have been fine if he had not seen it, but the moment he saw it he was startled. His eyes flew open and he cried out involuntarily, "Qinghua!" "Huh." Yu Qianzhou laughed awkwardly. "Old monster, don't be impatient. Just wait a little longer and I will definitely burn you to death." "Yu Qianzhou, is this what you mean by giving me a quick death?" Immortal Lord Crocodile roared angrily. "Put away your green fire, it's useless to me." "Useless? Why is it useless?" Yu Qianzhou believed that he would not lie, because he also realized that the green fire could not burn him. He opened his arms, and the large area of green fire turned into several fire dragons and entered his sleeves. Immortal Lord Crocodile stared at him as he absorbed the green fire into his body. He asked in shock, "Where did you come from? How can you store the Samadhi true fire in your body? This is rare even in the celestial world. This is not something that can be found in the human world. You're going to die anyway. Why do you care about this?" Yu Qianzhou said casually. He asked curiously, "Why is your body so powerful? You're not afraid of the green fire when you're not resisting. What's going on?" Immortal Lord Crocodile said angrily, "Haven't you noticed that I'm different from ordinary crocodiles? I can see it at a glance. It was bigger than the average crocodile. The strangest thing is that it's actually silvery white in color. To tell you the truth, this is the first time I've seen it." Yu Qianzhou clicked his tongue. "T. I'm a primordial mutant. I'm born extraordinary and I'm unique in the 3 realms. It would be strange if you've seen someone else." Immortal Lord Crocodile said proudly, "I was born impervious to fire and water and I'm immune to all poisons. My cultivation speed is also faster than ordinary people. It's an innate divine ability. What right do you think I have to become one of the 12 great immortal monarchs of the immortal world? Others might be afraid of your green fire, but this old man doesn't care." Yu Qianzhou was surprised. "So it's a rare animal. No wonder you didn't react at all when I said I was going to burn you with green fire. You were born to be impervious to fire and water. Impressive. By the way, does this fire have any effect on you?" With a flip of his palm, a ball of black flame suddenly rose from the center of his palm, and the surrounding temperature instantly dropped. He was prepared to make a move after getting a clear understanding of the situation, lest he wasted his efforts. Immortal Lord Crocodile's bright red pupils shrank and he exclaimed, "Black fire? You actually have black fire, one of the Samadhi true fires, in your body?" Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes and said, "Don't make a fuss. Let's get to the point. Can black fire kill you? Xianxia, have you already cultivated the Samadhi true fire? Immortal Lord Crocodile had just finished speaking when he quickly denied it. Impossible. Rumor has it that those who can cultivate such an amazing technique are all people who have reached the peak of the celestial world. With your cultivation, it's not enough to fuse 3 types of fire into the Samadhi true fire. His big red eyes were filled with disbelief as if he had seen a monster. It was difficult for him to get back to the topic at hand. No, I'm still missing 1 type of purple fire. Why? Look at your surprised expression. Is the Samadhi true fire very powerful? Xianxia showed a humble expression. It's more than powerful. Immortal Lord Crocodile's tone was solemn. The Samadhi true fire is invincible and can refine anything. It's the true fire that refiners dream of, and it's also the nemesis of cultivators in the 3 realms. The tyrannical part of the true Samadhi fire was that no matter how high one's cultivation was, even if one's cultivation was strong enough to withstand its burning, once one was trapped by it, regardless of whether one was human, devil, demon, ghost, or immortal, it would rapidly burn one's cultivation. When you can't withstand it anymore, it will immediately refine you to the point where you'll never be able to reincarnate. This thing is a taboo even for the immortal emperor and the emperor of the underworld. So if anyone in the celestial world has cultivated the Samadhi true fire, immortal Emperor Jin Tai will kill them at all costs. The threat is too great and it's simply untouchable. It's that powerful. Xianxia rubbed his chin with one hand, his eyes flashing. After a while he stared at Immortal Lord Crocodile and asked, "Old monster, tell me honestly, where can I find the purple fire? If you dare to hide it from me, I'll kill you immediately." Immortal Lord Crocodile paused, then suddenly burst into laughter. "You're really not a good person. I'm already lying here motionless, waiting for you to kill me. Why do you still have to threaten me?" The fierce expression on Xianxia's face froze, and he immediately reacted. His aura immediately weakened and he put on a fawning smile. "Immortal Lord Crocodile, since you don't want to live anymore, just tell me where the purple fire is, okay?" Immortal Crocodile let out a long sigh and said, "Xianxia, I advise you not to be too ambitious. With your current cultivation, even if you successfully cultivate the Samadhi true fire, it will only bring you harm. Once the news reaches Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's ears, he definitely won't let you go. He'll guarantee your death. You haven't seen how terrifying Jin Tai is and you can't imagine it." Xianxia said disdainfully, "I can't even live my life now and I'm always racking my brains to wander around. I don't care about Jin Tai or Yin Tai in the future. I'll just let the present be peaceful first. Just tell me where I can find the purple fire and you don't have to worry about the rest." "You've got guts, kid. You don't even care about Immortal Emperor Jin Tai." Immortal Lord Crocodile was first impressed, then said, "I don't know where to find the purple fire either. The purple fire is the source of energy that sustains the operation of a realm. It's extremely powerful and at the same time invisible and traceless. Very few people can find it. It's said that the purple fire operates according to the laws of heaven. It might be right next to you, or it might be thousands of miles away, or it might be scattered all over the world, and those who are not fated to find it will not be able to find it." Xianxia was stunned and said in astonishment, "It's so mysterious? Doesn't that mean I might never find the purple fire in my lifetime?" "Yes, that should be the case, but I do know some information about the purple fire in this realm. Maybe it can help you find it," Immortal Lord Crocodile said with a smile. Xianxia's eyes lit up and he said in surprise, "Tell me quickly." "I can tell you, but you have to promise me one thing." Immortal Lord Crocodile's laughter contained a hint of treachery, as if he had finally found something to use against him. "You're threatening me? Let me tell you, I don't fall for that." Xianxia's face immediately darkened, but after a while he smiled again and said, "I'm just joking with you. If you have any requests, just tell me. As long as it's within my power, I'll definitely do it for you." He patted his chest so loudly that it was almost swollen. He was full of pride and his words were worth their weight in gold. Despicable person. A complete despicable person. This old man was wrong. If I were to die in your hands, I would really die with regrets. Luckily, this old man came to his senses early. Immortal Lord Crocodile cursed for a while, then said indifferently, "This old man suddenly doesn't want to die anymore. As long as you find a way to pull the sword out of my body, I'll tell you about the purple fire." You don't want to die anymore? Yu Qianqiu asked curiously. You just asked me to give you a quick death. He did not think that after chatting with Immortal Lord Crocodile for such a long time and chatting so well with him, Immortal Lord Crocodile's disheartened desire to die had been rekindled. This was no less than a psychologist's counseling. Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly realized that it was actually quite good to be alive. After all, he had persevered for so many years, and now that he had a chance he naturally had to grasp it. Bolsh **. Immortal Lord Crocodile said angrily, you stabbed me full of holes and I'm still alive and well. You call that giving me a quick death? If I let you torment me any further I'll be scared to death by you. With your little ability, you won't be able to give me a quick death. You can only torture me. I don't want to die, Dao. You just need to tell me if you agree or not. Otherwise there's no need to talk. Who says I can't give you a quick death? Yu Qianqiu flashed the black fire in his palm. Don't I still have black fire here? I haven't tried it yet. To be honest, he did not want to let Immortal Lord Crocodile go. If he let such a powerful person out, who knew what he would do to him? There's no need to try. Black fire is invincible in the mortal world, but it's useless against people from the reincarnated immortal realm, netherworld realm and demon realm. The people of the three realms have already been reborn and have lost the vitality of the mortal world. Your black fire won't be of any use at all. To me it's even worse than blue fire. Unless you have the purple fire or the Samadhi true fire, it's useless, Immortal Lord Crocodile said impatiently. How will you know if you don't try? Without another word, Yu Qianqiu quickly condensed the black fire in his palm into a black flying sword. With a whoosh, it shot directly at the huge body below. In the end there was a muffled poof. It was as if it had been defeated and could not even stab into the body. It was indeed inferior to the blue fire flying sword. Under Immortal Lord Crocodile's angry glare, Yu Qianqiu smiled sheepishly. I tried. It's really useless. The black sword flew back into his sleeve. I'll ask you again. Do you agree or not? Immortal Lord Crocodile threatened. I won't say this a third time. If you miss this opportunity, even if you agree, I won't tell you anything about the purple fire. Old monster, you're playing this game with me. Do you really think I'm scared? Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. I'll let you see how powerful I am. If this doesn't let you die a quick death, I'll agree. With that he closed his eyes. Immortal Lord Crocodile swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. He looked at Yu Qianqiu suspiciously and curiously, not knowing what he was up to. Suddenly he saw a stream of water carrying a fish that weighed more than 5 kilograms. Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and casually waved his hand at the fish. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes widened. A lively fish turned into a skinny dried fish in the blink of an eye. It floated unsteadily between his eyes on the bridge of his nose. Chapter 729. Its two big red eyes stared at the dried fish on the bridge of its nose. It looked scary and cute at the same time, and one could not help but laugh. Yu Qianqiu asked cheerfully, "How is it? This should give you a quick death, right?" He was not in a hurry to kill Immortal Lord Crocodile. He had to get information about the purple flames first. He wanted to scare him with the fish first. Immortal Lord Crocodile took a while to recover and asked, "How did you do it?" When Yu Qianqiu heard that there was hope, he touched his palm and threatened, "I advise you to tell me about the purple flame. Otherwise, I will turn you into a dried crocodile and drag you ashore for the cannibals to slowly enjoy." Staring at him with its big red eyes, Immortal Lord Crocodile said in a low voice, "You're not a good person at all. I'm afraid that if I tell you, you'll kill me immediately. You're worrying too much. My reputation is well known outside. I have always been honest with both the old and the young, and I always keep my word." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand indifferently. "As long as you tell me about the purple flames, I'll definitely find a way to pull the sword out for you. Don't give me that. I've lived for so many years and I've seen all kinds of people. People like you are the most unreliable." Immortal Lord Crocodile said firmly, "Just one sentence. Help me pull the sword out and I'll definitely tell you about the purple flames. Otherwise, no matter how you threaten me, I'm already half dead. Do whatever you want to me." "Do you really think I don't dare to kill you?" Yu Qianqiu shouted. His ruthless nature exploded and he looked like he was ready to kill at any moment. Hearing this, Immortal Lord Crocodile slowly closed his eyes, acting like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. Yu Qianqiu immediately lost his temper. If he was not greedy for the purple flames, he would definitely kill him immediately. The point was that he really wanted the purple flames. He was used to doing whatever it took to achieve his goals. To put it nicely, he was flexible, but to put it bluntly, he was a despicable person. The two were in a stalemate for a while. Immortal Lord Crocodile seemed certain that Xianxia would not dare to kill him. He lay there without opening his eyes. Xianxia gritted his teeth. Old monster, you win. I can help you pull the sword out, but how do I know that you won't go back on your word after you get out? With your ability, if you were to try to kill me, wouldn't I suffer a great loss? Immortal Lord Crocodile finally opened his eyes slowly and said in a low voice, Don't worry, I'm more trustworthy than you are. As long as you help me get out of trouble, I will be extremely grateful. Why would I harm you? Don't give me that. Normally, people who boast about their trustworthiness often don't keep their word, said Xianxia disdainfully. These words were a little like measuring others by oneself. Immortal Lord Crocodile sneered. You're talking about yourself, right? No matter who I'm talking about, you have to make me feel safe. Otherwise, I'll be frank with you. I'd rather kill the wrong person than let you go. Xianxia scowled. This was indeed his bottom line. No matter how good the purple flames were, they were not as important as his life. If he lost his life, so what if he had the purple flames? Immortal Lord Crocodile was silent. He could understand what Xianxia was thinking. If he did not believe his words, how could Xianxia believe his words? After a pause, he said, Then what do you want? How about this? I can make an oath first. As long as you tell me about the purple flame, I will help you pull out the sword. This should be enough sincerity, right? Xianxia said with a sincere expression. In his heart, however, he was thinking that once he knew about the purple flames, he would kill Immortal Lord Crocodile first and then help him pull the sword out. That would not be breaking the oath. Sincerity, my ass. Immortal Lord Crocodile sneered. I've lived for so long and I've never seen anyone get retribution for breaking an oath. I've never believed in swearing an oath. Xianxia was stunned and said in astonishment, No way. There won't be retribution for breaking an oath? This was a little subversive of his beliefs in the cultivation world. That's right, there will be retribution for breaking an oath. But that's human retribution, not heavenly retribution. I'll get retribution just because I said a few words? Isn't that child's play? If oaths were really that magical, the three realms would have been peaceful long ago. Why would I be trapped here? Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly said in a mocking tone, How about this? I swear that you let me go first and then I'll tell you about the purple flames? Xianxia was speechless. He did not want to let the old monster out at all. He wanted to take advantage of the loophole in the oath to kill the old monster. Who knew that oaths were like farts in the old monster's eyes? Wouldn't he be asking for trouble if he let the old monster go? If he really did that, he would be an idiot. He said helplessly, Forget it then. I knew you were up to no good, Immortal Lord Crocodile said sarcastically. Xianxia frowned in deep thought. This was indeed a difficult problem to solve. The crux of the problem was that neither side believed in the other's promises. If he wanted both sides to compromise, he had to think of a solution that would satisfy both sides. After thinking for a while, his eyes suddenly lit up. He remembered that day on Obedient Island when he had talked with Bai Changchun all night. Bai Changchun had casually mentioned the matter between the Myriad Swords Demon Lord and the Dragon God. He wondered if it was true. Have you ever heard of forming a blood alliance? Xianxia suddenly asked. Forming a blood alliance? Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned, then immediately refused. No, you must be joking. With your cultivation level, you don't deserve to form a blood alliance with me. If I really do that, I'll suffer a huge loss. Isn't a blood alliance equal? Why would you suffer a loss? Xianxia asked curiously. He remembered Bai Changchun saying that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord and the Dragon God only got together after forming a blood alliance of mutual equality. Bai Changchun didn't know the specifics. As it's equal. A blood alliance is like a blood alliance between mortals. It means to face difficulties together and not to harm each other. Logically speaking, this method is very suitable. But the difference in cultivation level between us is too great. If I encounter any trouble, can you help me deal with it? In other words, if I'm in trouble, you can only watch. And if you're in trouble, I won't have such a good life. Once someone violates the true meaning of forming a blood alliance, they will immediately suffer the backlash of the alliance blood. Only you can think of such a method of harming others to benefit yourself. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old? Immortal Lord Crocodile said angrily. So that's how it is. Yu Qianqiu nodded and muttered to himself. He looked strangely at the huge body below and coughed. Since you're afraid of suffering a loss, how about this? I'll take a step back. As long as you form a blood alliance with me, I can bring you out of the Holy East Lands. Are you satisfied now? Holy East Lands? What Holy East Lands? What does Holy East Lands mean? Immortal Lord Crocodile asked blankly. Yu Qianqiu stared blankly and was truly somewhat speechless. However, thinking about it, it made sense. This group of people trapped in the East Holy Land probably didn't know that the people outside called this place the East Holy Land. So he explained solemnly, what I mean is, I can bring you out of this land that's sealed by the heaven and earth formation. Do you understand? Immortal Lord Crocodile was shocked. What did you say? You can bring me out of this damn place sealed by the heaven and earth formation? Yu Qianqiu, don't lie to me. Everyone who had been trapped with him wanted to escape, but after going through so many difficulties, they all knew how powerful the heaven and earth formation was. They didn't have the ability to get out. Who would have thought that the guy in front of him would say that he could get out? How could he not be shocked? There's hope. Yu Qianqiu said disdainfully, why would I lie to you? I just came from the outside. I'm just here to play. I'll go back when I'm bored. If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do. Okay, I promise you. I'll form a blood alliance with you. Immortal Lord Crocodile agreed without hesitation. Then he controlled his agitated emotions and said in a low voice, but listen carefully. Once you form a blood alliance with me and help me get out of the heaven and earth formation, you should help me solve the problem. If you don't help me, you'll be devoured by the alliance blood. If you're lying to me, I'll kill you even if I have to suffer the backlash of the alliance blood. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said boldly, no problem. Then he said weakly, by the way, I don't know how to form a blood alliance. Teach me how to do it first. The Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately taught him the process of casting the spell. There was something to learn, so Yu Qianqiu paid 120% attention and asked in detail what he didn't understand. Fortunately, this was not a powerful spell. It was just a strange oath method that had never been seen before in the human world. It didn't take a long time to cultivate. Although it was a little complicated, one taught sincerely and the other learned diligently. The latter quickly mastered it. After learning it, Yu Qianqiu and Immortal Lord Crocodile agreed to start. Yu Qianqiu muttered an incantation and began to cast a spell. He made a cut on his index finger and his fingertip moved quickly in the air before him. Within a 1-meter square blood circle, densely packed lines and Sanskrit words began to appear. At the same time, Immortal Lord Crocodile controlled the water to form a water arrow and shot it into his mouth through the gap between his fangs. A dark red blood snake came out, and its agile steps automatically formed a pattern that looked like what Yu Qianqiu had drawn. When both of them finished casting the spell, Yu Qianqiu pointed at the blood totem in front of him. The blood totem slowly flew toward the blood totem flying from Immortal Lord Crocodile. The two blood totems merged with each other without any difference, as if their hearts were connected. Then the two blood totems crossed and passed through each other, each emitting a dazzling red light. They formed two beams of red light that shot into Yu Qianqiu and Immortal Lord Crocodile's bodies. Yu Qianqiu checked his body and felt no discomfort. He heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "Is this done?" "It's done," Immortal Lord Crocodile said excitedly. "Yu Qianqiu, quickly help me remove this sword." He couldn't wait any longer. "Old monster, it's a piece of cake." "No problem. Watch me." Yu Qianqiu laughed and flew toward the huge silver body below. After landing on Immortal Lord Crocodile's back, he couldn't help but step on it. After all, there weren't many opportunities to step on an expert like this. He asked, "Old monster, you don't mind if I step on you to borrow strength, right?" Chapter 730. "No, go ahead," Immortal Lord Crocodile replied straightforwardly. He did not have the time to care about that now, nor would he think about Yu Qianqiu's evil intentions. Hee. Yu Qianqiu squatted down with a smile and touched the thick silvery white leather armor with a rare look on his face. It was really rare. He looked around and realized how small he was squatting on it. He could not help but say, "Old monster, you're really big. If you go out, you'll definitely scare people." Yu Qianqiu, stop dawdling and get down to business first. Don't tell me you don't have the ability to pull it out. Immortal Lord Crocodile screamed. You're underestimating me. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. Even if it weighs 1,080,000 kilograms, I'll still pull it out. He was not boasting. He had already planned that if he really could not pull it out, he would immediately mobilize a team from Utopia. With everyone working together, there was no reason they could not pull it out. Then stop dawdling and pull it out. Immortal Lord Crocodile could not wait any longer. Yu Qianqiu walked to the giant sword that pinned Immortal Lord Crocodile and looked it up and down. He could not help but be amazed. The dark golden body of the sword faintly glowed with a golden treasure light, dyeing him golden as well. After being buried in water and mud for so many years, the body of the sword was still shiny. He could feel the majestic aura from the body of the sword before he even touched it. It was indeed not an ordinary object. He walked around the giant sword twice but found a problem. The sword was too big and he really did not know where to start. He reached out to push it but it did not move. He pushed it again with all his strength but it still did not move. Immortal Lord Crocodile also felt it and said sadly, I forgot to tell you, the body of the sword is stuck in the rock under me. If you want to pull it out, I'm afraid it will not be as simple as 108,000 kilograms of strength. Can you shut up? If I say I'll pull it out for you, I'll pull it out. Why are you being so long-winded? Yu Qianqiu angrily kicked the sword twice. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed slightly and shut his mouth in disappointment. Damn it. Only such a big sword can pin you down. It's a perfect match. Yu Qianqiu reached out and stroked the blade of the sword. Suddenly his eyebrows twitched. He could not help but infuse his divine sense to check it out. As a result, as soon as his divine sense touched the sword, he immediately sensed an ancient aura that deterred the world. It shook back his divine sense that wanted to invade the sword. His divine sense was crazily forced back, and a majestic ancient aura bounced over. Yu Qianqiu didn't have time to react, and was suddenly shaken to the point of vomiting a mouthful of blood. He himself was sent flying. Immortal Crocodile immediately exclaimed, Yu Qianqiu, are you crazy? How dare you use your divine sense to check it? Didn't I tell you? The sword contains the remnant of the great god Yi's soul. It's not something you can peek at with your low cultivation. You must be tired of living. Are you okay? Yu Qianqiu, who had fallen on the silver armor more than 10 meters away, struggled to get up. His chest was swollen and he felt a sweetness in his throat. He spat out another mouthful of blood which spread in the lake. He spat out the blood and his breathing was much smoother. However, his face was frighteningly pale. His divine sense had been damaged in an instant. If not for the water's resistance, he would have been sent flying more than 10 meters away. At the same time, the water's resistance helped him absorb a lot of the force. Otherwise, he would have been seriously injured. I'm fine, just a small injury. Yu Qianqiu looked at the dark golden giant sword in horror. He was speechless. This sword is too domineering. He stopped halfway and his eyes were a little dazed. Don't use your divine sense to check it again. Even if it's the remnant of the great god Yi's soul, it's not something you can withstand with your current cultivation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been suppressed for so many years. Immortal Crocodile also paused in shock. The blood that Yu Qianqiu had spat out earlier lingered in the water like a red mist. When the red mist touched the giant sword, the treasure light around the giant sword suddenly stopped. Then the red mist elongated like a flowing cloud, circled the giant sword once and began to spiral upwards. When it reached the handguard where the hilt and the body of the sword met, it was suddenly sucked in by the bow-shaped symbol on the handguard. Just as the red mist was sucked in, the bow-shaped symbol suddenly emitted a dazzling golden light and disappeared in a flash. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes from the piercing pain. When he opened his eyes again, he didn't know if he was imagining things, but he felt that the bow seemed to have become much more lifelike, filled with a tension that was ready to be unleashed. Yu Qianqiu, what did you do to it just now? Immortal Crocodile asked in surprise. Damn it. Old monster, you should ask what it did to me. Yu Qianqiu paused. He suddenly felt as if something on the sword was staring at him. It was as if a pair of deep and frightening eyes were hidden in the sword, silently watching him. He looked carefully, but there was nothing different. He didn't find anything different about the sword, but it made him feel like he was being watched. Yu Qianqiu was holding his breath and observing silently when he suddenly heard a sigh. Sigh? A deep sigh full of ancient charm reverberated in his ears. making him feel as if he had traveled through time and space to the distant past. The sound gradually dissipated after a long time. Who is it? Don't sneak around. Come out if you dare. Yu Qianqiu looked around vigilantly. Below, Immortal Crocodile's big red eyes were also looking around, full of doubt, but Yu Qianqiu didn't seem to be faking it. He couldn't help but ask, Yu Qianqiu, what's wrong with you? Didn't you hear it just now? Yu Qianqiu looked around vigilantly and asked, someone sighed in my ear just now. Didn't you hear it? His big red eyes paused and then he looked around again, but he didn't find anything. Immortal Crocodile said strangely, I didn't hear anything. I didn't find anyone either. Are you hallucinating because you were injured just now? Yu Qianqiu looked around and said suspiciously, is that so? You really didn't hear anything? Immortal Crocodile immediately said, isn't my cultivation higher than yours? If you can hear it, how can I not hear it? Stop being so suspicious. Hurry up and think of a way to help me pull the sword out. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu thought about it and felt that it was true, so he withdrew his suspicious and vigilant attitude. He walked up to the giant sword again, tilted his head and looked around. Indeed, he didn't find anything unusual, but the blood-sucking scene just now inevitably made him suspicious. He carefully stretched out a finger and gently poked the sword. Seeing that there was no reaction, he poked it twice. After confirming that there was no problem, he touched his chest, which was still a little stuffy, and suddenly felt that this injury was too undeserved. I say, Master Yu, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and think of a way to pull it out. Immortal Crocodile couldn't help but urge him again. Shut up, you've been suppressed for so many years, don't you care about this little bit of time? Can't you see that I'm thinking of a way? Yu Qianqiu mercilessly said to him, stroking the dark golden blade with his palm, muttering to himself, it's a little too big, it's a little difficult to cut. If only it could be a little smaller. Immortal Crocodile, who was below, also exclaimed at the same time. The two of them were stunned at the same time. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his eyes in disbelief, thinking that he was hallucinating. He really seemed to have seen the giant sword shrink a little just now. Yu Qianqiu lifted his foot and stomped on Immortal Crocodile below, asking, Old monster, did you feel anything unusual just now? I felt something unusual. I felt the sword in my body move. Really? Why did I feel like it was a little smaller? The two of them stopped talking at the same time. The bottom of the lake was unusually quiet and they were both a little suspicious. Finally, Immortal Crocodile asked again, what did you do to it just now? I didn't do anything. Yu Qianqiu's head-scratching hand rested on the sword's blade and said, I just wanted to touch it a little. I hope it's a little smaller so that I can. His gaze immediately froze. This time it seemed that the huge sword had shrunk a little. Below, Immortal Crocodile's voice trembled as it said, I also feel that it's a little smaller. You seem to be able to control it. Control it. Try again and see if you can make it smaller. Let me feel it carefully again. Yu Qianqiu looked at his palm in disbelief and carefully pressed it on the sword. He said weakly, make it a little smaller. He retracted his hand and asked in a trembling voice, either excited or afraid, Old monster, it seems to have shrunk again. Do you feel it? Yes. Try again, make it shrink as much as possible. As long as my pinned life soul escapes, I can escape on my own. Immortal Crocodile was extremely excited. Yu Qianqiu pressed his palm on the sword again and calmed his emotions. He looked up at the outline of the giant sword and said, smaller. Sure enough, he clearly saw the giant sword shrink this time. Smaller. Immortal Crocodile felt the movement of the giant sword in his body and immediately shouted excitedly with Yu Qianqiu. The more they shouted, the more excited they became. Yu Qianqiu watched as the giant sword shrank rapidly until the hilt reached his shoulder. Suddenly, there was a tremor under his feet and he stopped shouting. Looking left and right, he saw a huge silvery white body slowly twisting and turning. It looked a little scary. Old monster, you can move now? Yu Qianqiu asked in shock. Immortal Crocodile laughed wildly and said, the giant sword has shrunk and moved away from the life soul that was pinned to my side. I can escape. Yu Qianqiu, thank you. Stand still. With a loud shout, the giant crocodile's huge body, which had been lying there for more than 100,000 years, shook. Its huge tail began to shake and its huge and ferocious head began to raise. Its huge and strong limbs began to support itself. The surrounding clear lake water quickly became turbid due to the commotion. Chapter 731. Garland and the others who were waiting by the shore suddenly saw waves on the calm surface of the lake. The entire moon lake seemed to be in turmoil. The cannibals retreated in horror, their eyes filled with fear of the unknown. The undercurrent under the lake moved. Xianxia, who was standing behind the giant crocodile, hurriedly squatted down to reduce the huge resistance his body had to withstand. He grabbed the uneven silver-white armor with both hands to prevent himself from being thrown off. As the giant crocodile's strong limbs slowly lifted up, the giant sword, which had shrunk a lot, slowly sank into the body along with the hilt. Crimson blood stained a large area of the lake. Not long after, the giant crocodile stood up completely, its whole body shining with silver light. All of a sudden, the huge body lying at the bottom of the lake disappeared. Xianxia looked around in shock, only to see the dark golden giant sword, which was more than 10 meters tall, standing at the bottom of the lake, inserted into a huge rock. There was a groove at the bottom of the lake, created by the huge body. Xianxia, shouldn't you come down? Immortal Lord Crocodile's voice suddenly came from below. Xianxia looked down and was shocked. He saw himself riding on the shoulder of a person, his hands holding the person's head. How could this be? There was no need to rush him anymore. Xianxia jumped away, floating in the lake, and looked at the person in front of him suspiciously. This person was tall and well-built. He wore a silver-white robe and his snow-white hair fluttered in the lake. He was a large man with a pale face and no facial hair. His bright and piercing eyes stared at Xianxia with a smile. Xianxia asked carefully, "Old monster, is that you? Do I not look like it?" The other party asked with a smile. Xianxia floated around him twice, muttering, "Sounds like the voice of an old monster. What?" Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his silver hair and laughed wildly. "Xianxia, it is me. This old man is finally free." Xianxia was taken aback. He took a few more glances at him before he rolled his eyes and said, "What's so funny about being free? Are you afraid that people don't know that you've been suppressed for more than 100,000 years? After saying that, he turned around and floated towards the giant sword. He placed his hand on it and muttered, "Smaller, smaller, smaller." The dark golden giant sword rapidly shrank. The unbridled smile on Immortal Lord Crocodile's face froze, and his mouth fell open. On second thought, getting out of trouble should be something to be happy about, right? Why did it seem like he was shameless after hearing what this kid said? He opened his mouth and wanted to be happy, but he found that he couldn't smile at all. Immortal Lord Crocodile's facial muscles twitched. He closed his mouth and looked at the huge mark at the bottom of the lake. He sighed. He had been trapped for 100,000 years. Indeed, there was nothing funny about it. He should feel sad instead. Sigh. With a long sigh, Immortal Lord Crocodile turned to look at Xianxia, only to find that Xianxia had disappeared. Just as he was feeling strange, he saw Xianxia jump out of the crack at the bottom of the lake. The crack was the wide hole that the giant sword had pierced into the rock at the bottom of the lake. Xianxia was holding an ancient dark golden sword in his hand. He was stroking it with a look of curiosity. Immortal Lord Crocodile's pupils shrank as he stared at the sword in Xianxia's hand. He was all too familiar with this sword. It was the divine sword that the myriad swords demon lord used to suppress him. Xianxia inadvertently caught a glimpse of his eyes. He immediately hugged the sword and said in a low voice, "What are you trying to do? Let me tell you, we have a blood alliance. This sword is mine now. Don't you dare try anything funny." Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and said, "Don't misunderstand. I'm just curious how you can pick it up so easily with your cultivation. Can you really control it?" Xianxia asked suspiciously, "You really won't snatch it?" Immortal Lord Crocodile didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Why would I snatch it? Although this sword is good, not everyone can control it. If I'm not careful, I might get hurt by it. Even if it falls into my hands, it's no better than an ordinary immortal treasure. Besides, I can't even thank you enough. Why would I snatch something from you? I'm just curious how you can control this divine sword." Xianxia stroked the sword and said proudly, "Blood test. You've never heard of it, right? This is called fate." "Blood test my ass. It's been stuck in my body for so many years and I've lost at least a few hundred kilograms of blood. But I've never seen it recognize me. Although Immortal Lord Crocodile said this with his experience, he had already guessed that what Yu Qianqiu said was true. This divine sword must have recognized him as its master. A branch of the heaven-splitting arrow, a divine sword possessed by the remnant of the great god Yi's soul, had recognized this kid as its master. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. He couldn't tell what he was feeling. There was jealousy, envy and amazement. In fact, as he said, not everyone could control this divine weapon. It had nothing to do with cultivation. Only those who were recognized by the divine weapon had the right to control it. Immortal Lord Crocodile had a vague guess. This kid might have been recognized by the remnant of the great god Yi's soul, which was why he could control this sword. Otherwise, with his cultivation, it would be difficult for him to pick it up so easily. Although he knew everything, he just didn't want to say it. Yu Qianqiu held the sword and touched it. He couldn't bear to part with it. He laughed and said, "Good stuff. Good stuff. I don't know how powerful it is, but it can't be wrong. If I don't like anyone else, I'll try it on them." In fact, he didn't know what was so good about the divine sword, but he kept praising it. "Yu Qianqiu, I advise you not to take this thing out. I won't snatch it from you, but it doesn't mean that others won't." Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed slightly. "If it were 100,000 years ago, I would definitely snatch it. However, I've been silent with it for 100,000 years and I know a little about it. The power of the great god Yi is inviolable and I don't think I can control it. However, others don't think so. The treasure left behind by the great god Yi had once shown its power in the hands of 10,000 swords. This is something that everyone knows. Once people know that you have a divine sword, I'm afraid that not many people can resist its temptation. You'll be in big trouble then." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He immediately put away the divine sword and looked around as if he was afraid of being seen. Immortal Lord Crocodile's silver hair fluttered in the wind. He shook his head and said, "You know better." He really couldn't understand why the divine sword would recognize Yu Qianqiu as its master. "Thank you for the reminder." Yu Qianqiu chuckled. He suddenly frowned and asked, "Old monster, I've already helped you get out of trouble. Shouldn't you tell me about the purple flame?" Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned. He said awkwardly, "Actually, I don't know where the purple flame is." "What?" Yu Qianqiu's face immediately fell. He said in a low voice, "Old monster, you lied to me? Don't be anxious. Let me finish what I'm saying. Although I don't know the exact location of the purple flame, I know its rough location. Do you want to hear it?" A smile immediately appeared on Yu Qianqiu's face. He nodded repeatedly and said, "I want to hear it, I want to hear it. Tell me quickly." Immortal Lord Crocodile said in a low voice, "It's said that the reason why the Myriad Swords Demon Lord was able to set up the heaven and earth formation here was because he relied on the infinite power of the purple flame. The purple flame is also the source of power supporting the entire heaven and earth formation. This should be true. Otherwise, the heaven and earth formation wouldn't be able to trap so many immortal and netherworld experts. Based on this deduction, the purple flames should be supporting the operation of the entire formation in this sealed continent." Chapter 732. Yu Qianqiu was pleasantly surprised. The purple fire is inside the heaven and earth universe formation? It should be. I'm almost certain. Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded. Yu Qianqiu was extremely excited. Just think about it, the Samadhi true flame was a taboo even for immortal emperors and underworld kings. Once he obtained it, he would be able to do whatever he wanted in the mortal world, let alone other places. Just thinking about it made him excited. His eyes lit up. He rubbed his hands and asked, "Old monster, where do you think the purple fire is in the formation?" "I don't know," Immortal Lord Crocodile answered readily. Yu Qianqiu's smile froze. "The East Holy Land is so big. If you don't have a rough location, how am I supposed to find it?" "I really don't know. How do you want me to answer? Moreover, I only promised to tell you about the purple fire. I didn't say that I would definitely find it. I've already fulfilled my promise." Immortal Lord Crocodile said calmly, "Now it's time for you to fulfill your promise. Take me out of this damned place sealed by the heaven and earth universe formation." Yu Qianqiu was furious. He felt like he had been tricked. He waved his sleeves and said, "I did promise to take you out, but I didn't say when. We'll talk about it when I'm free." It was impolite not to reciprocate. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a majestic aura burst forth from Immortal Lord Crocodile's body. The surrounding water instantly formed a transparent shield, wrapping around Yu Qianqiu. Like shackles, the huge pressure shocked Yu Qianqiu. He said in a low voice, "Old monster, what's the meaning of this? I've already warned you not to lie to me. Otherwise, I'd rather suffer the backlash of the Alliance blood than let you go." Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly increased the pressure on Yu Qianqiu. The transparent shield continued to apply pressure. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes. He slowly moved his palm toward the water shield and pressed it. He suddenly shouted, "Break!" The water shield, which was as hard as steel, shook and silently collapsed. It merged with the surrounding lake water. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes widened as he sized up Yu Qianqiu curiously. Given his cultivation level, it should have been impossible for him to break through the pressure exerted by his water-dispelling spell, but he had done so easily. What surprised him the most was that he didn't feel the slightest resistance of power or cultivation, and the water barrier just silently shattered. Yu Qianqiu stared at him and said coldly, "I advise you not to threaten me with force. As long as I don't want to die, no matter how high your cultivation is, you can't do anything to me." "Oh." Immortal Lord Crocodile's silvery white robes fluttered in the wind as he said indifferently, "Then I shall give it a try." "There's no need to try. If I say you can't, then you can't." Yu Qianqiu casually waved his hand and said, "Besides, I don't want to suffer the backlash of the Alliance blood. There's no need for me to die with you. I can send you out now, but I have to warn you first. After leaving the Holy Eastlands, you'd better not cause trouble in the human world. Otherwise, I will make you regret escaping this place at all costs." Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled faintly. He didn't think that Yu Qianqiu could do anything to him. Instead, he took Yu Qianqiu's threat as words of pride. He nodded and said, "Don't worry, I have no interest in the human world. After leaving this Holy Eastlands, I will cancel the blood alliance with you and immediately return to the celestial world. From then on, we will have nothing to do with each other. As for the matter of you obtaining the divine sword, I will not reveal it to anyone. Just pretend that we've never met." Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He didn't think that the blood alliance could be cancelled. But this was good too. With his current strength, it was indeed wishful thinking to control the other party. His previous plan was a little too wishful thinking. He nodded and said, "All right, we'll talk about getting out of here when we get ashore. There are some things that you need to pay attention to. Don't ruin my plans." He immediately told him some things. After listening to him, Immortal Lord Crocodile pondered for a while and agreed. The sun shone brightly on the moon lake and it regained its calm. Garland and the others who were waiting by the shore no longer held any hope for Yu Qianqiu's survival. Hence, the shore became busy again. The hundreds of crocodile corpses were enough to keep them busy for a while. But to them it was also a rich source of food. If they stored it, it would be enough to last them for a long time. A few people stayed behind to guard the lake, while the others gathered in groups of 3 to 5 to pull out the spears and dismember the crocodiles. It was not safe to stay near the lake, and no one knew if the monster would appear again. From today onwards, no one among the cannibals would dare to bathe in the moon lake anymore. At this moment, the people on the shore suddenly shouted excitedly, He's still alive." Everyone looked over and saw a head emerge from the lake. It was gradually rising from the lake and wading slowly to the shore. If it was not Yu Qianqiu, who else could it be? Garland, who was talking to a few children, turned her head and her beautiful eyes lit up. She didn't care about anything else and dashed towards the lake. She rushed into the water and jumped onto Yu Qianqiu's wet body. Her 2 beautiful legs wrapped around Yu Qianqiu's waist. Yu Qianqiu supported her subconsciously and hugged her plump buttocks. He was really speechless. "I'm very traditional." "Oh." The people by the lake were instantly excited. They raised their arms and cheered. The children even jumped up and down. This was the warmest welcome for the warrior's return. No one expected that Yu Qianqiu, who had been in the lake for a night, could still come back alive. Suddenly the cheers stopped. Everyone's eyes were fixed on something not far behind Yu Qianqiu. They saw another person rising from the lake. His long silver hair was wet and stuck to his cheeks. His silver-white robe was wet and stuck to his burly body. His face was fierce and cold. Garland, who was hugging Yu Qianqiu's head and pressing it against her full breasts, was stunned. Yu Qianqiu struggled to free his head from her full breasts and almost suffocated. He turned to look at Immortal Crocodile behind him and said, "Thanks to his help we killed the monster in the lake. From now on this peaceful lake will belong to you cannibals forever." After saying that, he pulled Garland away from him and put her down. The people on the shore looked at each other and suddenly burst into cheers. They danced happily on the spot. No one wanted to leave this mother lake that had raised them for countless generations. They were used to having sex by the lake and giving birth to their next generation. They really didn't want to leave this place. Boli waved his arm and the cannibals rushed to the lake, splashing water everywhere. Xianxia was lifted and thrown into the sky by a group of people. They caught him when he landed and threw him up again to show their respect for the brave warrior who protected their home. Some people surrounded Immortal Crocodile. A few strong young men stretched out their arms and grabbed Immortal Crocodile's thighs, trying to lift him up. Unexpectedly, he was as solid as a rock. He stood upright in the water and couldn't be lifted at all. Just as they were surprised, they heard Snow Lord Crocodile yell, "Get out of my way." His gaze fell on the group of crocodile corpses on the shore, and a faint murderous aura emanated from him, scaring the group of people. Everyone's eyes were on him. They didn't know why this brave warrior was so heartless. Xianxia, who was being held by the crowd, frowned and said, "Old Snow Lord. They don't mean any harm." In fact, he was secretly reminding him not to forget what he had told them below. The word Snow Lord sounded like a woman and Immortal Crocodile's facial muscles twitched. He glanced at the crowd, then stared at Xianxia and said, "I'm not used to having too many people. You should finish what you promised me first." He had promised Xianxia that he wouldn't attack the cannibals in the lake, and he would accompany Xianxia to put on a show. However, the crocodile corpses on the shore were too conspicuous. If he stayed any longer, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself. Xianxia followed his gaze, and when he saw the crocodile corpses on the shore, he suddenly understood everything. He struggled to get the people who were carrying him to put him down. He walked up to Garland and smiled. "He helped me kill the monster in the lake and I promised to help him a little. I'm afraid I have to leave for a while. I'll be back again." After saying that, he waved at Immortal Crocodile and walked towards the shore. Immortal Crocodile pushed through the crowd and followed. Because of his murderous look, the crowd fell silent. The cannibals didn't say anything, and they silently watched the two figures disappear into the depths of the forest on the side of the mountain. In the dense forest, the sunlight shone through the branches and leaves, dazzling the eyes. The two of them walked, one in front of the other. Immortal Crocodile, who was walking behind, stretched out his arms, his broad palms constantly touching the branches and leaves that brushed past him. He carefully took each step, listening to the rustling sound of the thick leaves under his feet. His expression was a little dazed, as if he was in a dream. He suddenly stopped and asked, "Xian, have I really escaped? Am I dreaming?" Returning to the human world and seeing the lush greenery and beautiful sunlight once again, he found that it was a little surreal. Xianxia, who was walking in front, stopped and turned to look at Immortal Crocodile. He shook his head slightly and revealed a pitiful expression. "You have indeed escaped from the lake, and it was I who saved you, you ungrateful fellow. I understand how you feel, but it has nothing to do with me now and I won't comfort you. I just want to ask you, after you leave the Holy Eastlands, do you really have the confidence to leave the human world and return to the celestial world?" Immortal Crocodile recovered from his daze and said in a low voice, "This is not something you should worry about. I naturally have a way to return to the celestial world. You just need to bring me out of the heaven and earth universe formation." A mocking smile appeared on Xianxia's face. He looked around and after confirming that there was no one else, he nodded slightly. "Alright, then let's do it here." After that, he took out a few small silver balls from his storage pouch. He muttered an incantation and shot out a silver light from his hand, scattering the silver balls in all directions. Then he made a messy hand seal that even he didn't know what it was. Immortal Crocodile was confused. He tilted his head to listen, trying to hear what he was muttering, but it was like a secret language. Even with his experience, he couldn't understand a single word. When Xianxia stopped, he finally couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" Xianxia rolled his eyes and said mockingly, "You've lived for so many years, yet you can't even tell that I'm setting up a formation?" "Setting up a formation? What formation?" Immortal Crocodile was taken aback. He looked suspiciously at the few silver balls hidden in the thick grass. If they were setting up an array, Why didn't he sense any energy fluctuations? Was there such an array formation technique in the world? Chapter 733. You haven't seen it before, right? Yu Qianzhou winked and said, don't underestimate it. Let me tell you, this is a teleportation array I created myself. Don't you want to get out of the Holy East Lands? This array can teleport you to the outside of the Holy East Lands. That's how I came in. In his previous life he seemed to have seen this saying in some random novel, so he casually used it to fool this old monster. Teleportation array? Immortal Lord Crocodile's mind was in a daze. He racked his brains to think. Unfortunately, he did not remember the legend of this array. He looked suspiciously at the smug Yu Qianzhou. To be honest, he still somewhat believed it. This was because when Yu Qianzhou broke his water control technique in the lake, his method was very strange. He did not feel any movement at all, and the water control technique was quietly broken. Now he did not feel any energy fluctuations when he set up the array. In short, although Yu Qianzhou's cultivation was not high, he felt that it was a little strange. Coupled with the strange thing about the divine sword recognizing its master, Yu Qianzhou seemed a little mysterious in his eyes. Come stand beside me. Let's get ready to go. Yu Qianzhou pointed to his side, which made Immortal Lord Crocodile a little nervous. He had never played with this thing before, so he did not know whether it was dangerous or not. He weakly stood beside Yu Qianzhou, carefully looked around and asked, "Is this okay?" Yu Qianzhou stared at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, "Don't blame me for not reminding you. Close your eyes first, hold your breath and don't move. Otherwise, don't blame me if you encounter any danger during the teleportation." Close my eyes. Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately became vigilant. You won't do anything to harm me, will you? Yu Qianzhou said disdainfully, measuring the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a vile person. Do you think that everyone is as ungrateful as you? Have you forgotten that we formed a blood alliance? What's the difference between harming you and harming myself? After hearing what he said, Immortal Lord Crocodile thought about it and agreed. If Yu Qianzhou harmed him, he would definitely suffer the backlash of the alliance blood. He probably would not do anything out of line. So he nodded with ease and said, "Then let's start." After that, he consciously closed his eyes. Yu Qianzhou raised half of his brows and said in an enigmatic tone, "Old monster, I'll say it again. If you open your eyes halfway and something happens to you, it won't be my fault. If something happens to you, don't blame me." As he said that, he released his divine sense and enveloped the old man. Immortal Crocodile naturally felt that he had been enveloped by his divine sense. His eyes moved and he wanted to open them, but he forced himself not to. He nodded and said, "I'll listen to your arrangements." He paused, keenly sensing that the surroundings had changed. Yu Qianzhou had also withdrawn his divine sense. What puzzled him the most was that he could still hear the sound of waves crashing against the shore. A gust of wind blew over, carrying the fishy and salty smell of the sea. Immortal Lord Crocodile was shocked. Could there really be such a magical array in this world? He really wanted to open his eyes and take a look, but he was afraid that something might happen. The sea breeze continued to blow, suddenly becoming stronger and blowing away the fog in front of him. On the mountain peak, Yu Qianzhou silently looked at the vast continent in front of him that was covered in fog. He said quietly, "Old monster, I've fulfilled my promise. You can open your eyes now." Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes suddenly opened and he quickly looked around. His gaze swept across the endless deep blue sea, the island he was standing on, and the vast continent covered in fog. His pupils shrank and he said in a daze, This is the island opposite the East Holy Land. I've seen it before." The shock in his heart was indescribable. He had really escaped from the continent that was sealed by the East Holy Land. How was this possible? He turned his head with difficulty and looked at the calm Yu Qianzhou beside him. He realized that the young man in front of him was so unfathomable. It was as if he had divine means. So many top experts from both the Netherworld and Immortal World could not do it, but he had done it, and so easily. Yu Qianzhou did not move and said calmly, "That's right. This is the island opposite the East Holy Land. It's now called Xianxia Island." He put his hands behind his back and imitated Bai Chongqun's words and actions. He did have the demeanor of an expert. At this moment, an angry shout suddenly came from the island. "Who dares to trespass on my Xianxia Island?" A figure shot over quickly. Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at him and waved his hand disdainfully. A huge silver palm shadow with the aura of rolling thunder appeared out of nowhere. It swatted the figure back like a fly. Xianxia happened to turn around and was immediately dumbfounded. He recognized the person who had barged in angrily. It was Patriarch Nanming. That palm strike was probably going to be tough for him. He quickly stopped Immortal Lord Crocodile and said, "Don't attack. He's one of us." Immortal Lord Crocodile's raised palm paused for a moment before he put it down again. Patriarch Nanming, who had been smashed into the ground by the palm strike, immediately coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood and crawled out. He looked battered and exhausted. He pulled out a golden net from his storage bag to defend himself. He looked at the mountain peak in shock. The power of that palm strike was too strong. He was enveloped by that aura, and he did not even have a chance to escape. He could not imagine who in the cultivation world could have such a high cultivation. Senior Nanming, it's all a misunderstanding. Patriarch Nanming was stunned. There were two people on the mountain peak and one of them was Xianxia. He was waving his hand and apologizing to him. His figure flashed, and he resisted the discomfort in his body as he flew toward the mountain peak again. He ignored Xianxia, who was laughing apologetically, and locked his gaze on the silver-haired and silver-clothed burly man. The other party was even taller and stronger than him, and he looked at him as if he was looking at an ant. His eyes were filled with disdain. His temperament especially was rarely seen in the world. Patriarch Nanming was shocked. Putting aside the fact that he could not see through the other party's cultivation, the power of that strike was even more terrifying. Based on his experience, he had never seen such a person in the cultivation world. Suddenly he coughed twice and he could not help but spit out a lump of extravasated blood in his chest. "Senior Nanming, are you all right?" Xianxia hurried over to support him. Patriarch Nanming was already quite injured, but he still wanted to save face and shook his head. "It's just a small injury, it's nothing." He stared at Immortal Lord Crocodile and asked, "Your cultivation is very high. May I know which expert has come to visit my Xianxia island?" It was clearly a compliment, but a hint of bitterness flashed across Immortal Lord Crocodile's face. Was his current cultivation still considered high? It had already fallen from mid-stage Immortal Emperor to late-stage Exalted Immortal. Who knew how many years it would take for him to recover his previous cultivation? He closed his eyes slightly and said, "Your Xianxia island? When I came here, this island did not have a master yet." As he spoke, he lifted his hand slightly, and his silk-like sleeves shook open to reveal a golden bracelet. A white light flashed from it. A small porcelain bottle appeared in Immortal Lord Crocodile's hand. He threw it to Patriarch Nanming and said, "I did not know that you were acquainted with Xianxia just now. Your injuries are not light, take this to heal. One is enough." He was obviously giving face to Xianxia. Xianxia's expression froze. He stared at the golden bracelet on Immortal Lord Crocodile's wrist. His eyes shone brightly, but he was pulled back to reality by Patriarch Nanming, who was holding the porcelain bottle. Seeing Patriarch Nanming's questioning look, he immediately smiled awkwardly and explained, "This is my friend, his name is Jun. The two of us traveled around the world and happened to come to this place to rest. We did not expect to have a misunderstanding with you. Please do not take it to heart, it is purely a misunderstanding." Jun. Patriarch Nanming was stunned. He had never heard of such a person in the cultivation world. He tilted his head to look at Xianxia with a face full of suspicion. He had long heard from Noizhu that this fellow had remarkable abilities. It seemed that Noizhu was not lying. He did not know when this fellow had made such a powerful friend. It seemed that he had suffered today's injuries for nothing. But then again, even if he was not Xianxia's friend, he would not be able to seek justice. The other party was too powerful. That. Xianxia smiled awkwardly and said, "Senior, you should go back and heal for the time being. We have some private things to discuss when we borrow your precious land." He was tactfully persuading him to retreat. Patriarch Nanming was not an ignorant person. With a face full of doubts and a stomach full of anger, he turned around and rushed down the mountain. Jun stared blankly at the misty East Holy Land, giving people a strange feeling of loss. Patriarch Nanming's compliments made him think of many things in an instant. The excitement he felt after escaping from the lake in the East Holy Land was gone in an instant. He was thinking, with his current cultivation, even if he returned to the immortal world, Could he really restore his former glory as one of the 12 great immortal monarchs? With the cultivation of a mere exalted immortal, he might not even be qualified to stand firm in the immortal world. He knew Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's character very well. He would never take care of a useless person. Perhaps he really had to start from scratch. Only he who had experienced it could understand the hardships. Yu Qianzhou stared at him silently for a while. His eyes turned and he smiled faintly. Old monster, aren't you going back to the immortal world? How are you going to go back? Yes. I'm going back. His voice was very soft as if he was talking to himself. It was full of desolation. I haven't seen the scene of ascending to the immortal world. Why don't you take me with you? Yu Qianzhou asked with a sincere smile. Immortal Crocodile looked back at him blankly and nodded, feeling like his soul had left his body. He said, okay. He directly grabbed his arm, turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky. The protective formation of Xianxia Island was useless. It was easily pierced through like a paper window. This scene caused Patriarch Nan Ming, who was sitting cross-legged at the foot of the mountain, to feel a toothache. He lowered his head and pulled out the stopper of the porcelain bottle in his hand. A strange fragrance assailed his nostrils. Just a whiff of it made him feel refreshed. He poured it into his palm. There were only 6 pills the size of a thumb. They had a faint white glow, and the surroundings were immediately filled with a strange fragrance. Patriarch Nan Ming's eyes lit up. With his experience, he naturally knew that these pills were not ordinary. He put 5 pills back and held one in his hand, hesitating. Then he thought about it and felt that Yu Qianzhou would not harm him, so he directly put one into his mouth. A sweet fragrance assaulted his nostrils. When the pill reached his mouth, it immediately turned into sweet saliva and slid down his throat. After flowing into his stomach, a cool and warm feeling rose in his abdomen. They intertwined and mixed together, spreading into his meridians and seeping into his limbs and bones. Patriarch Nanming, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened them. He looked at his body and felt that all the pores on his body had opened up. His pores were actually emitting a faint spiritual energy and fragrance, and a thin mist was lingering around his body. His entire body felt comfortable from head to toe, and it was so comfortable that he almost wanted to let out a moan. He could not help but exclaim in surprise, "Good stuff." He looked at the porcelain bottle in his hand and remembered that there were still 5 pills inside. He quickly put it into his storage bag like it was a treasure. He immediately closed his eyes and locked all the pores on his body to seal the medicinal effect. He calmed his heart and regulated his breathing. Several hours later, when he slowly opened his eyes again, he was pleasantly surprised to find that not only had his serious internal injuries healed, but even his cultivation, which had always been difficult to improve, showed signs of breaking through to the peak of the middle stage of soul formation. He stood up and let out a long cry of joy against the raging waves of the sea. His whole body felt so comfortable. This feeling was so good. Standing on a rock by the sea, Patriarch Nanming looked at the sea and sighed. The cultivation of the silver-robed man was so terrifying that it was engraved in his heart. From the looks of it, he seemed to have a special relationship with Yu Qianzhou. Otherwise, he would not have given him such a good bottle of panacea just because of Yu Qianzhou. A panacea that could help a soul formation cultivator improve his cultivation and heal serious injuries was definitely not an ordinary thing with such a miraculous effect. Ishuejuan, this Yu Qianzhou is really not simple. He actually has a friend with such an unfathomable cultivation. Patriarch Nanming muttered to himself and shook his head. He could not help but laugh when he thought of Nongzhu's worries. Nongzhu was worried that after Bai Tongchun left, Yu Qianzhou would be bullied. He had such a good friend who could bully him. She wondered how Patriarch Nanming would react if he knew that he had not taken a panacea, but an immortal pill given by one of the 12 great immortal monarchs in the immortal world. But then again, it was a blessing in disguise. High above the white clouds, 2 people were flying together quickly. Yu Qianzhou, who was being dragged by Immortal Lord Crocodile, was already used to such high-speed flying. He was surprised at first. Immortals were indeed immortals. They could fly so fast. However, he could imagine that if Immortal Lord Crocodile had not been carrying him, and if his cultivation had not fallen so much, his flying speed would have been unbelievably fast. Looking at the direction they were heading and the terrain below, Yu Qianzhou had vaguely guessed where Immortal Lord Crocodile was going, and they were almost there. As he thought about it, he could already see the colorful fog in the distant sky. In the blink of an eye, the two of them landed on the desolate Gobi Desert. Opposite them was the majestic colorful fog. Xianxia seemed to be moving his hands and feet casually, but his eyes were observing the expressions of the people around him. Immortal Lord Crocodile was completely stunned. He looked at the place in front of him that was sealed by the colorful fog in disbelief. After a long time he cried out, "Soul transformation smoke. It's actually the soul transformation smoke. This place is actually sealed by the soul transformation smoke. Oh my God. Who can tell me what's going on?" Chapter 734. Xianxia stood silently at the side. He didn't know what was going on, but after talking to Bai Changchun that night, he knew it was the work of Demon Lord Thousand Swords. He seemed to be specially used to trap the immortals in the immortal world. That madman was too vengeful, and he wouldn't let others have an easy time even if he died. This was a secret, and he couldn't tell Immortal Lord Crocodile. Am I seeing things? Why is there so much soul-transforming smoke here? Who did this? Immortal Lord Crocodile muttered to himself in shock. He turned around and asked, "Xianxia, do you know what's going on here?" "What do you mean what's going on?" Xianxia said disapprovingly. "This place has always been like this. I don't know how long it's been here, but we've always called this place the Fog Forest. Why? Is there something wrong? Always been like this." Immortal Lord Crocodile was speechless, and his face darkened as he pondered. Xianxia waited silently for a while, then asked, "What is this soul-transforming smoke you speak of?" Immortal Crocodile suddenly raised his head and stared at the ever-changing seven-colored mist. He said in a daze, "That colorful mist is the soul formation smoke, which is extremely poisonous. Once you come into contact with it, no matter how high your cultivation level is, it will be useless. I don't know where this thing came from. Even in the immortal world it rarely appears. Most people have only heard of it and I've only seen it once. Why is it here? And it's so big and it's been gathering here for a long time. So powerful." Xianxia exclaimed, then asked knowingly, "Old monster, what are you doing here? Is this place related to your trip to the immortal world?" Immortal Lord Crocodile stared at the fog forest and nodded slightly. "There's a passage connecting the immortal world and the mortal world here. It's called the Immortal Ascension Stage. I was about to use the Immortal Ascension Stage to ascend to the immortal world, but who knew this place would be sealed by the soul-transforming smoke? Heavens! If the people of the immortal world descended without knowing anything, then wouldn't it be a trap? It was definitely a trap. Who did it? This is too vicious. Since you want to go back to the celestial realms so badly, why don't you think of another way? Is there any other way to get to the immortal world?" Xianxia comforted. In fact, he also wanted to know if there was any other way. Suddenly an eagle circled in the sky. Immortal Lord Crocodile raised his hand without even looking, and the eagle was instantly pulled down by him. It drew an arc in the air and flew into the colorful fog, then flew out and stopped in front of the two of them. At first the eagle could be seen struggling in the air, but after a while the color of the eagle's feathers became brighter and brighter. Finally, like a specimen, it froze and stopped moving. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed slightly and retracted his hand into his sleeve. The eagle fell to the ground and turned into a puddle of pitch-black water. Other than the Immortal Ascension Stage, there are other ways to get to the immortal world through the underworld and the demon world. Forget about the demon world, it's basically impossible to enter. And the underworld's emperor of the underworld has never been on good terms with the immortal emperor. If I barge in without the underworld's permission, only death awaits me. With my current cultivation level, don't even think about it." Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head helplessly. "Unless my cultivation level is so high that I can shatter the void and open a new path. But then again, if my cultivation reaches that level, no one will be able to stop me if I want to pass through the netherworld." "Then what should we do?" Xianxia said with a look of pity. "If that's the case, doesn't that mean you can't go back?" "We'll see." Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed and turned to face him. "You don't owe me anything anymore. I'll teach you how to break the blood oath. From now on we have nothing to do with each other." Seeing his disheartened look, Xianxia laughed and patted his shoulder. "Old monster, don't be discouraged. There must be a way. Maybe we just don't know about it yet. Since the blood oath hasn't been broken, do me a favor first." After dawdling for so long, he finally got to the point. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes turned cold. He stared at the hand patting his shoulder and said indifferently, "If you have something to say, say it. Obviously, he was not impressed by Yu Qianzhou's actions. Yu Qianzhou sheepishly withdrew his affectionate hand and said with a chuckle, "You also know that I want to find the purple flame. Why don't you accompany me to the Eastern Holy Land? You can go by yourself. Why drag me along? Moreover, I don't know where the purple flames are," Immortal Lord Crocodile said expressionlessly. Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly. "Have you forgotten? You're not the only one sealed in the Heaven and Earth Qianquan formation. There are many old friends of yours inside. It's too dangerous for me to barge in there with my cultivation level." "You mean you want me to protect you?" Immortal Lord Crocodile snorted. "You've got the wrong idea. Even if I want to help you, I'm afraid I won't be able to. If my old friends are still in the East Holy Land, I won't be able to protect you with my current cultivation level." "How is that possible?" Yu Qianzhou was shocked. "Aren't you old friends? If there's any trouble you can just tell them. After all, you used to be one of the 12 great immortal lords, second only to the immortal emperor. Don't tell me they won't give you face?" Immortal Lord Crocodile laughed coldly. After a while he asked, "What do you think I relied on to rise up in the celestial world? I climbed up step by stepping on the corpses and shoulders of others. I've offended countless people. If they find out that my cultivation level has fallen to such a level, think about the consequences." Yu Qianzhou was stunned. As expected, where there were people there would be grudges. The celestial world was no exception. After a moment's hesitation, he suddenly looked up at Immortal Lord Crocodile and said in a low voice, "Are you afraid of them? If I were you, I would definitely take back the glory that once belonged to me, not hide. If you don't even dare to face the East Holy Land, why do you want to return to the celestial world? If you ask me, the East Holy Land is the place where you can start anew." Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes flashed as he stared at Yu Qianzhou. An uncontrollable aura circulated around him. After a long while he retracted his aura and narrowed his eyes. "Although I know you're trying to provoke me, but I agree." Yu Qianzhou was delighted. He didn't care if Immortal Lord Crocodile saw through his provocation. As long as he agreed, it was fine. He took out a few silver balls and prepared to set up a formation. Unexpectedly, Immortal Lord Crocodile shouted, "Wait!" Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He raised his head and frowned. "Are you going back on your word again?" Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head slightly. "You don't look like someone who knows his place. Before we go, let's dissolve the blood oath first. Otherwise, if you keep causing trouble, won't I be dragged down to death by you?" Yu Qianzhou opened his mouth but was speechless. It was really difficult to control this old monster. However, he couldn't force him, so he could only nod and agree. Then Immortal Lord Crocodile began to teach him how to dissolve the blood oath. After spending some time to learn it, the two of them cut the blood talismans drawn on their palms at the same time. They put their left palms together and chanted to use their magic power. A bloody light flashed across their bodies and flowed from their left arms to their palms. After the two bloody lights met on their left palms, they suddenly exploded with red light and disappeared. The two of them withdrew their left hands at the same time. There was a pool of blood in their palms. Yu Qianzhou shook off the blood on his palms and said angrily, "Are you satisfied now?" Immortal Lord Crocodile's face was cold as if nothing had happened. Yu Qianzhou was speechless. He flicked out a few small silver balls and pretended to set up the array. After he was done, he pointed to his side and gestured for Immortal Lord Crocodile to stand up and prepare to leave. Unexpectedly, Immortal Lord Crocodile looked puzzled. He stared at the few small silver balls on the ground and said suspiciously, "I remember that you used 6 silver balls to set up the array. Now you only used 5. Are you sure this is okay? Could it be that you made a mistake?" Yu Qianzhou's face twitched. He didn't expect Immortal Lord Crocodile to be so observant. Even he himself had forgotten how many silver balls he had used earlier. He said angrily, "I know better than you how to set up the array." Immortal Lord Crocodile thought about it and stopped talking. He just looked at him deeply, then silently stood beside him and closed his eyes. In the blink of an eye, he felt the surroundings change. He heard Yu Qianzhou's voice. "It's done." Thus, when he opened his eyes, he discovered that he had returned to the forest where he had left the Eastern Holy Land. Immortal Lord Crocodile was amazed when he saw the magic of the teleportation array again. He followed Yu Qianzhou, who was walking out of the forest, and said, "Yu Qianzhou, if it's possible, can you teach me this array?" Yu Qianzhou walked through the forest and said without looking back, It's not that I don't want to teach you, but you can't learn it at all. I'll tell you the reason when I have the chance. You'll know then. Seeing that he was unwilling to teach, Immortal Lord Crocodile didn't say anything more. After the two walked out of the green forest, they saw the shining moon lake. Their eyes moved and were attracted by the situation at the bottom of the brownstone mountain. They saw many cannibals surrounding a tent. They didn't know what was going on. They looked at each other and felt a little curious, so they quickened their pace. Someone saw them from afar and someone immediately exclaimed, "The warrior is back! The warrior is back!" The crowd outside the tent looked over. Garland was the first to squeeze through the crowd. She ran straight into Yu Qianqiu's arms without any hesitation. She hugged Yu Qianqiu's head and kissed him. Passion was like fire. Yu Qianqiu felt a little overwhelmed and quickly pushed her away. He pointed to the tent that everyone was surrounding and asked, "Garland, what happened over there?" Garland immediately said, "An immortal was injured. He fell into Moon Lake while flying from the sky and bled a lot. When the tribesmen fished him out, he was unconscious, but he's awake now. He won't let us go near him and is sleeping cross-legged in the tent." An injured immortal? Yu Qianqiu and Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at each other and immediately let Garland lead them over. When they arrived at the tent, Immortal Lord Crocodile opened the tent without hesitation. Yu Qianqiu followed in, while the others were obviously afraid of the immortal and did not dare to enter. When Yu Qianqiu saw the person sitting cross-legged in the tent, he was shocked. The injured immortal was none other than his master, Bai Chongqun.